Chapter 687. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign /say, net this is a wonderful free reading without a pop-up window. Say it again. Xiao Yinru's sharp voice had long lost its former serenity and dignity. If a woman had no children, what was the purpose of her entering the Imperial Palace with great efforts? First miss, there's really no special way. Dr. Chiu frowned and shook his head helplessly. Shuqi's face changed greatly and she begged, Dr. Chiu, it is said that your medical skills are different from others and have their own effects. Can't you think of a different way from other doctors? Moyan also begged, Dr. Chiu, please save my master. Even if she is slightly injured. Speaking of this, Moyan couldn't go on. Her face turned pale, she panicked, and her eyes were full of panic. She had gone overboard. How could she, as a maid, make the decision for her master and say such words? It doesn't matter even if it will harm my health. Xiao Yinru reached out to press on the corner of the table and said word by word. Dr. Chiu fell silent and didn't refuse as he had before. This gave the three of them some hope and they stared at Dr. Chiu eagerly. The doctors invited before all shook their heads and said that Xiao Yinru had hurt her health and might not be able to have a child in this life. Not only the doctors invited from outside, but Duke Xing even secretly went to the imperial physician in the Imperial Palace in the name of treating his concubine, but they all said the same thing. When Xiao Yinru was on the verge of despair, she suddenly thought of Dr. Chiu, so she asked Shuqi to invite him over. At the moment, she had to make every possible effort. No matter who could save her, she was not afraid at this time. She didn't care about what had happened in the mansion, including the demotion of Madame of Duke Xing. Since Madame of Duke Xing entered the ancestral hall, she hadn't gone to see her or even asked about her. All she could think about was her health. She grasped the corner of the table tightly, looked at Dr. Chiu eagerly, and said in a trembling voice, as long as I can have a child in the future, I can do anything. It will harm your health. First miss, you can give it a try. Dr. Chiu thought about what to say. I don't care. Anything is fine. Xiao Yinru was overjoyed and said anxiously. But this is really harmful to the body. Eldest Miss knows that although my acupuncture method can save the patient, it's not very good for the patient. That's what happened to Miss Wang. If Eldest Miss forcibly uses acupuncture and medicine. Dr. Chiu said while thinking. He's about to lose his life? Xiao Yinru blacked out and almost fainted. She and Madame of Duke Xing plotted Wang Yishu's death together. So how could she not know that Wang Yishu's life would not only not recover but also get worse under Dr. Chiu's acupuncture? But it was also Dr. Chiu's ability to delay for 3 years. No! Dr. Chiu shook his head. Sweat broke out on Xiao Yinru's forehead and she said, in this case, it doesn't matter even if it's related to my life in the future and I can live a few years less. As long as nothing happened now, she could bear it. First Mrs. Health will be very weak in the future. Even if she has a child, it will be easy for her to miscarry and she needs to recuperate. It's related to the length of her life. It's indeed possible that the first Mrs. Life will be shortened by a few years. Or even if his life is not in danger, I'm afraid that he will have to stay in bed when he gets older in the future. After thinking for a while, Dr. Chiu told her all the consequences. His medical skills were unique. In terms of weirdness, he could be regarded as the best in the world. However, his weirdness mainly hurt the patient's body. Speaking of which, his medical skills were not accepted by ordinary people. Everyone wanted to cure the patient when they were sick and prolong their life. However, he only seemed to get better on the surface, but actually damaged his body. Nevertheless, there was also an advantage of his medical skills. He could temporarily stabilize the patient's condition. After a series of acupuncture, the patient seemed to get better. However, it was just on the surface. When Dr. Chiu was in the south of the Yangtze River, he had treated a few patients. They were fine at the beginning, but after he treated them, they seemed to get better, but in fact, they were worse. Some of them even died, but there was no evidence that they died in Dr. Chiu's hands. Dr. Chiu was spared, but more and more people were unwilling to let him treat them. Only those who were seriously ill were willing to come to him to have a try. Some of them had some effects. When the doctors were at a loss, They could live for a while in his hands before dying. Dr. Chiu's reputation was also mixed. After being invited to the capital city by Duke Xing's mansion, he had been living in Duke Xing's mansion and only treated Wang Yishu. He lived a leisurely life with a lot of consultation fees and a leisure life. Dr. Chiu was very satisfied with such a life. At present, he really wanted to cure Xiao Yanru's health. After receiving the consultation fee from Madam of Duke Xing, it was his duty to help his master. However, in case of an accident, he had to make it clear in advance. Okay. Xiao Yanru gritted her teeth and accepted it. She couldn't care about the future now, and she didn't want to care about it. She only wanted her body to be able to give birth to a child. In this case, first miss, I'll give you a prescription first. You can take the prescription and recuperate for a period of time. When it's almost time, I'll give you acupuncture. Dr. Chiu said. Okay, thank you, Dr. Chiu. Xiao Yanru took a deep breath and said coldly. Shuqi took Dr. Chiu to the wing room on the side to prescribe the medicine, and Moyan stood behind her with her head lowered to serve her. The room suddenly fell into a strange silence. Moyan moved her feet in a panic, stole a glance at Xiao Yanru's gloomy side face, and didn't dare to say a word. After a long while, she heard Xiao Yanru's voice. Did my mother enter the ancestral hall? I heard that she was punished by old Madam and Duke Xing. Moyan said cautiously. She had reported it to Xiao Yanru at the beginning, but Xiao Yanru slapped her hard at that time and told her that it had nothing to do with her and that there was no need to report it to Madam of Duke Xing in the future. Now hearing Xiao Yanru's question, how could she not panic? It's all her own doing. She dared to ask me to prescribe the medicine to Xiao Wanru without checking what kind of medicine it is. Hasn't she thought about what will happen to me if the medicine is accidentally used on me? It will harm me for the rest of my life. Xiao Yanru said coldly, and her eyes fell on a vase of plum blossoms by the window. The plum blossoms in full bloom this morning were picked very beautifully. It could be seen that the person who picked the flowers had put a lot of effort into it. The plum blossoms were sent from the ancestral hall. Naturally, it was Madame of Duke Xing who had asked someone to pick them and sent them here after she had inserted them in the vase. Throw this vase of flowers out and smash the vase. Xiao Yanru said sternly. Yes, miss. Moyan didn't dare to persuade Xiao Yanru. She hurried over and took the vase away. The first miss hated Madam, but didn't the first miss and Madam reach an agreement on this matter at the beginning? Both the first miss and Madam were at fault. But now that something had happened, the first miss blamed Madam. Even her biological mother had done so. How could they, the maids who followed the first miss, have any affection for the first miss? If something happened in the future, they would probably be the first to be pushed out. Dr. Chiu came back after prescribing the medicine and went to the Chuehua Gate. Xiao Yanru's Chiushue Pavilion was a little far from the Chuehua Gate. Dr. Chiu had something on his mind. As he walked, he was thinking about how to treat the first Miss Xiao next. Therefore, he walked very carelessly and didn't pay attention to his feet. His reaction was much slower than usual. He watched a little maid come over with a food box and bump into him. Then the little maid fell to the ground, covered her waist and couldn't get up for a while. The bump was not light. Dr. Chiu was also knocked back 2 steps and fell heavily to the ground. The medicine box on his back was also thrown out, and some bottles and jars were poured out. Even the needle set he placed at the bottom of the medicine box was thrown a distance away. He pressed his hand on the ground and felt a burning pain. He was knocked down by a maid. Before he could react, a miss appeared around the corner with a maid. When the maid saw the scene in front of her, she immediately asked, "What's going on?" "Miss, he didn't watch when he was walking. He bumped into me and even knocked me down." The little maid pointed at Dr. Chiu and said angrily. Although Dr. Chiu was absent-minded just now, he didn't walk fast and didn't use much strength. How could he fall backward after bumping into a maid? What are you doing in the mansion?" Chu Lu turned to look at Dr. Chiu and said with an unkind look. Xiao Wanru stood under a tree and looked at the needle bag that Dr. Chiu had been thrown out with a trace of doubt in her eyes. This needle bag looked very ordinary, with cyan as the base, which was a doctor's item. This kind of inconspicuous cyan color was widely used. What surprised her was the cluster of orchids at the bottom of the needle bag. Orchids were elegant, and their color had always been light. However, the orchids embroidered here were bright red, which was so bright that people couldn't tell that they were actually orchids. Bright red orchids. If it weren't for the fact that the flower was too familiar, Xiao Wanru couldn't even guess that it was orchids at once. This cluster of orchids was similar to the orchids on the needle bag in her hand. If it weren't for the color, they would be almost the same. The set of needles in her hand was given by Mingqiu Nun, who also had a set of needles. Xiao Wanru had seen that there was also such an orchid embroidery pattern on the needle bag. Except for the color, the orchid pattern on Dr. Chiu's needle bag was exactly the same as that of Mingqiu Nun and her. She bumped into me. Dr. Chiu argued angrily. She is such a little maid. How could she bump into you? Tell me who you are and why you are in our mansion? This is the backyard of Duke Xing's mansion, and not every man can come in. If you disturb the missus, what should you do? Chu Lu obviously didn't believe what Dr. Chiu said. She reached out with her hands on her hips and said angrily. She had never met Dr. Chiu before, so it was normal that she didn't know him. Moreover, although Dr. Chiu had lived in the mansion for so long, he had always lived in seclusion. The route and time of his daily trip were fixed, and he hardly met anyone. Most people in the mansion didn't know him. In the past, he liked this kind of quiet life without being noticed, but now he felt annoyed. A little maid even dared to question him, which really made him dislike her. Dr. Chiu got up from the ground with his hands and said with a cold face, "I'm a doctor invited by your mansion to treat the first Mississippi. I'm going out now. If you don't believe me, you can go to your first miss to verify it." Chapter 688. The doctor invited by the first miss? Is it true? Chu Lu said in disbelief. Looking around, she didn't find a servant or a maid and said, "Why didn't the doctor invited by the first miss show the way when he left the mansion?" Since the doctor was invited, he naturally needed someone to see him off. But now Dr. Chiu was alone. It was easy to understand. Dr. Chiu had lived in the mansion for almost 3 years and usually came and went alone. Xiao Yanru didn't think of sending him off, and he thought it was normal. However, he couldn't answer Chu Li's question at the moment. Just now, for the sake of convenience, he deliberately mentioned the name of the first miss in order not to arouse suspicion and let him go as soon as possible. But now he couldn't explain it. He could only say vaguely, "I often come to the mansion to see a doctor, so I don't need anyone to send me off. If you don't believe me, you can ask the first miss." The first miss and madam were in charge of the mansion, so Dr. Chiu was really not afraid of being investigated. "You often come to the mansion to see a doctor? Who have you treated?" Xiao Wanru walked over slowly with a needle bag, looked at Dr. Chiu's face lightly and asked. Dr. Chiu had seen a miss before. Xiao Wanru stood a little far away before, and it was inconvenient for him to stare at the Mississippi. Now when he saw Xiao Wanru walk over slowly, he looked up and didn't recognize her. "She is our 5th Mississippi, answer me quickly." Chu Lu scolded him. Dr. Chiu was stunned and hurriedly lowered his head. He immediately remembered that the 5th miss was the one who had caused a stir in the mansion these days. The matter of Wang Yishu was related to her. Sometimes Wang Yishu scolded the 5th miss in this way as if she couldn't wait to eat the 5th miss flesh and drink the 5th miss blood. It could be said that Wang Yishu had fallen into such a situation because of the 5th miss Xiao. Even though Dr. Chiu was not familiar with other people in the mansion, he was familiar with the 5th miss Xiao. Moreover, he entered the mansion because of the 5th miss Xiao. He didn't expect that the 5th miss in front of him was the 5th Mississippi. The timing was a little wrong. The first miss was going to ask him to treat a doctor and madam was locked up in the ancestral hall. "Greetings, 5th miss." Dr. Chiu composed himself and cupped his hands to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru gently shook her hand to indicate that he didn't have to be polite and asked, "Are you the doctor who treated Miss Wang?" Although she was young, she had an extraordinary bearing. The 3 years in the Yuhui nunnery had made her more and more stable. She looked at Dr. Chiu with a pair of deep watery eyes, as if she could see through his heart. What was more, her words were more straightforward, leaving no room for Dr. Chiu to dodge. Dr. Chiu's heart skipped a beat. This 5th Miss Xiao was so extraordinary. No wonder he heard that Madame of Duke Xing was forced to enter the ancestral hall because of her. It's for Miss Wang. Dr. Chiu lowered his head. How is Miss Wang? Why hadn't he recovered after 3 years? At that time, when I suddenly fainted in the palace, the Imperial physicians all said that the phlegm fire was rising and I only fainted for a moment. Why is it still not good until now? Xiao Wanru asked curiously and looked at the first madam of Chiu family. Dr. Chiu inexplicably had a feeling that he was being closely watched by something, which was very dangerous. He frowned and felt that he had been living a luxurious life in the past 3 years. How could he feel that a little girl's eyes and momentum were so amazing and even startled him? When he was in the south of the Yangtze River, no matter what kind of people invited him to see a doctor, he would say what he should say and never had stage fright. Even if someone else had an accident and came to see him later, he didn't care. When did he get flustered by a little girl's gaze? During the 3 years in Duke Xing's mansion, he had lived a relatively peaceful life. In fact, the past 3 years were also an accident. He didn't need to live for such a long time. Of course, the reason was because of the 5th Miss Xiao. With the words of the Imperial physicians in the palace, Dr. Chiu didn't dare to say anything rashly even though he felt that the 5th Miss didn't know any medical skills. After thinking for a while, he said slowly, it was indeed the phlegm fire that confused her mind, which was not a big deal. But when Miss Wang fell down, she might have hit something. As a result, although she woke up in 3 years, she couldn't walk, and her health got worse and worse. I'm afraid, speaking of this, Dr. Chiu sighed and shook his head. In the past 3 years, Wang Yishu did not show up in front of others and lay in bed every day. On the one hand, it was because of her illness, and on the other hand, it was true that her legs had been weak. Although she was not paralyzed, she could hardly walk independently. This was also an important reason why Madame of Duke Xing trusted Wang Yishu to stay in Duke Xing's mansion. Since Wang Yishu couldn't walk, she naturally couldn't go outside and talk about it. She couldn't see others, so no one would inquire about what had happened in the palace that year. Even if some misses who were on good terms with Wang Yishu and wanted to visit her, were sent away by her on the excuse that she was really weak. In the past 3 years, Wang Yishu actually hadn't seen any outsiders. Miss Wang can't recover? Xiao Wanru glanced at Dr. Chiu, who lowered his head slightly and asked lightly. That's right. Miss Wang actually. Dr. Chiu sighed again and said hesitantly. Could it be that Miss Wang has some secrets? Chu Lu interrupted and asked. She waved at Qing, who got up from the ground and looked aggrieved and said, Be careful yourself. Look, the doctor was also hit by you. Qing was very unconvinced. However, after looking at the cold-faced Miss and Chu Lu, who looked like a principal maid, she lowered her head to pick up the food basket that had fallen to the ground. After picking it up, she stood behind Xiao Wanru and glared at Dr. Chiu angrily. At first glance, it was obvious that she was a little maid who dared not to speak up. I don't know what secrets Miss Wang has, but I've heard Miss Wang mention 5th Miss Xiao and the things in the Imperial Palace many times. Dr. Chiu had been speaking half-heartedly. This way of speaking was very attractive, which made people itch to listen to him and want to finish his words. Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice, but she seemed not to be curious. She handed the needle bag in her hand to Chu Lu and asked her to return it to Dr. Chiu. She turned around and was about to go back. Dr. Chiu took his needle bag and looked up at Xiao Wanru, who had taken 2 steps, feeling a little anxious. 5th Miss, if you have nothing to do, please go to see Miss Wang. She is in such a poor condition. If she feels guilty, I'm afraid that she will die sadly. Dr. Chiu sighed again. His voice was neither high nor low, which could be heard by Xiao Wanru, who had just left. Xiao Wanru stopped, turned to look at Dr. Chiu and asked calmly, Does Miss Wang feel uneasy and sad? After all, Miss Wang is just a weak girl in a boudoir. Even if she was instigated by someone, she was just childish. But no matter what, she did wrong to 5th Mississippi 5th Miss. Please be magnanimous and let her die in peace. Dr. Chiu's expression became more and more bleak. Wang Yishu was his patient, and he had been treating her for 3 years. During these 3 years, even the doctor and the patient would get familiar with each other and talk about some things that they wouldn't say in front of others. What's more, according to what he said, Wang Yishu was going to die. When a person was about to die, his words would be kind. What's more, the dispute between Xiao Wanru and Wang Yishu happened inexplicably. In the end, it was Wang Yishu who got into trouble and couldn't get up for 3 years. Moreover, she was about to die. Speaking of which, Wang Yishu had a sad life. From this point of view, Xiao Wanru should go to see Wang Yishu no matter what. As expected, Xiao Wanru said lightly, "I will find time to see Miss Wang." After saying that, she turned around and left. Chu Lu and Qing hurriedly followed her. Looking at Xiao Wanru's back, Dr. Chiu pinched the needle bag in his hand and thought for a while. Then he picked up his medicine box, packed up his things, and carried the medicine box on his back. After thinking for a while, he turned in another direction instead of heading for the Chuehua Gate. He had planned this for a long time, so he had to tell Madame of Duke Xing. Even if Madame of Duke Xing couldn't get out of the ancestral hall now, he could still report it to her. Dr. Chiu came to our mansion 3 years ago. The day he came to our mansion happened to be the day when Miss returned to the ancestral hall. On that day, he came to our mansion to treat Miss Wang. But at that time, he didn't say that he would stay for a long time. He lived in a guest room outside and said that he would leave in a few days. On the day when Miss went to the Yue Nunnery, he officially moved into Duke Xing's mansion. Several servant girls inquired about the news very quickly and sent their own information to Xiao Wanru. If it had been in the past, when Madame of Duke Xing was still in charge of the internal affairs, it would not have been so smooth to inquire about it. But a lot of things had happened in the mansion recently. The most surprising thing was the downfall of Madame of Duke Xing. Now it was the third Madame who was in charge. The third Madame had never been in charge of the internal affairs in the past. The internal affairs had always been in charge of Madame of Duke Xing and Old Madame. Now she wanted to take everything into her own hands, so she was a little flustered. In addition, Nanny Sheng also entered the ancestral hall with Madame of Duke Xing, so the mansion was in a mess. Many servants were hesitating, not knowing whether they should find a new master or wait for their master to make a comeback. Their hesitation caused a mess. At this moment, it was the best time to inquire about the news. Moreover, many people knew what had happened to the first Madame of Duke Xing, so it was not a secret. However, because Dr. Chiu only came and went between Wang Yishu and the place where he lived now, he rarely met people in the mansion, so he didn't meet many people. Why did he come to our mansion so coincidentally? Xiao Wanru thought for a while and felt that it was too coincidental. Dr. Chiu was not from the capital city. Why did he come here when Wang Yishu came out? According to this speed, it didn't seem that he came to the capital city after Wang Yishu had an accident, which meant that he did not come to the capital city because of Wang Yishu. With an idea in mind, she turned to Qing and said, "Qing, go and find out whether Dr. Chiu had anything to do with the Deputy Prime Minister's mansion next door before he came to our mansion." Chapter 689. When Shichi returned to the mansion, it was already late. It was past dinner time, and his parents should have already gone to bed. Since he entered the Ministry of Justice, he had been so busy that he couldn't see his family when he returned home. The servant led the way in front with a lantern in his hand. When they arrived at the gate of the courtyard and when Shichi was about to step into the gate, he suddenly stopped and looked back at the figure under the pine tree at the gate. Third cousin. Gu Shishu walked out timidly from under the tree, followed by her servant girl, Lui. "Why are you here at this time?" When Shichi's eyes fell on Gu Shishu. Since Gu Shishu became his second brother's concubine in name, the two of them had no contact in private and even rarely saw each other in the mansion. When he served in the Ministry of Justice, he rarely stayed in the mansion. Later, in order to avoid arousing suspicion, he would avoid Gu Shishu even if he saw her from a distance. Third cousin. Gu Shishu became more timid, and her delicate face became more pitiful. Her eyelashes fluttered twice, with all kinds of affection and infinite grievances. She looked at the man in front of her timidly. Under the light, she looked even more beautiful and delicate. Any man with a heart of stone would soften when he saw her. "Concubine Gu, you are my second brother's concubine now. If you need anything, you can go to him directly." When Shichi looked at Gu Shishu calmly and interrupted her. The two of them had been officially married. Except that they hadn't officially slept together. Some people had secretly called him that. However, it was the first time that when Shichi called her that. Gu Shishu's eyes turned red, and then tears fell down one by one, looking extremely miserable. Third cousin, do you really want to do this? Don't you know what kind of person I am? It's also because of you that I am in this situation now. Third cousin. Speaking of grievances, she covered her face with a handkerchief and lowered her head to sob. Her clothes were thin and not expensive. Not only were they plain and pitiful, but she was also crying so hard that her shoulders were trembling. Even though she had turned around now, one could still sense her sorrow and despair from her appearance. Her affection for him? When Shichi sneered in his heart. He reached out to pull at his sleeves and said impatiently, "So concubine Gu is planning to avoid second brother and tell me her love?" These words were said by a man whom she admired. With such a scornful tone and such a sarcastic attitude, even though Gu Shishu had made up her mind, she still blushed with shame at this time. This time, she really cried and her tears fell down. Third cousin, no matter what you say about me, you know my feelings. No matter how I am now, my feelings will never change. She sobbed. The manservant looked around with a bitter face and became vigilant. When Miss Biao was still Miss Biao in the past, it was not a problem even if she crossed the line. But now Miss Biao was second young master's concubine. How could she still have the face to cry in front of his young master? Wasn't this going to cause a fight between the second young master and their young master? In the past, when he looked at Lady Biao, she did things in an orderly manner. But after the affair between her and the second young master was exposed, she started to run amok. Look at what was happening now. Was this what a concubine should do? How shameless she was to say this. Was she sure that his third young master couldn't do anything to her? Or was she sure that all men would fall for her tricks? In fact, the manservant looked down on Gu Shishu very much. In the past, before the matter broke out, he thought that she was still a lady from a respectable family. But now, she looked extremely unpleasant to the eye. Flirting with men and women, he thought, concubine Gu, who used to be a cousin and was a slut. When he saw his young master glancing at him, he could only raise his head helplessly and say, "Concubine Gu, please go back. If you have anything to say, go to second young master. If you want to leave the mansion, go to the Prime Minister and Madam. No matter what, concubine Gu's affairs have nothing to do with our third young master." Knowing that his young master was even unwilling to talk to her, the manservant could only be the villain. As he spoke with a bitter face, he glanced at his master, wondering if his master still wanted to talk with concubine Gu here. When Shichi turned and walked inside. Third cousin. Gu Shishu was very anxious. She took 2 steps forward and was about to pull when Shichi's sleeve, but he shook her off fiercely. "Concubine Gu, please behave yourself? If you continue to pester me, then go and find second brother." When Shichi said coldly. His eyes swept over Gu Shishu's exquisitely dressed face, and a trace of sarcasm flashed across the corners of his mouth. He was not his second brother. Seeing him enter the door, the manservant hurriedly followed him. Afraid that Gu Shishu would pester him shamelessly again, he hurriedly asked the old maid guarding the courtyard gate to close the courtyard gate. Seeing the courtyard gate closed heavily and the footsteps getting farther and farther, Gu Shishu's face showed cold anger. She kicked the tree on the roadside. The pain was excruciating, but she suppressed it in her heart and gritted her teeth to bear it. She had to bear it. She had to bear it. The first Miss Xiao had told her that if she couldn't bear it at this time, there would be no future. No matter what, she had to bear it, but she couldn't wait for the current matter. Mississippi, seeing that she stood here and didn't leave, Lu Yi reminded her in a low voice. This address was actually not in accordance with etiquette, but after Gu Shishu cried in front of when Shichi's mother agreed to this address and continued to use the address in the mansion. What should I do now? Gu Shishu said to herself. Her eyes fell on the tightly closed courtyard gate, and there was a trace of gloom in her eyes. Lu Yi suggested, "Do you want to tell the first Miss Xiao about this? You are also in a dilemma. This will make Xiao Yinru look down on me. If I ask for help in the future, She will also ignore it. Gu Shishu shook her head and refused. She and Xiao Yenru grew up together. At that time, because the children in the mansion were young, the two families specially opened a side door. It was at that time that the two girls, who were both scheming, got in touch. The longer they stayed together, the more Gu Shishu knew Xiao Yenru. If she had no value, she would not be of any use to Xiao Yenru, and then she would definitely not be able to ask for help in the future. She had to let Xiao Yenru see her value. Even if she was still the concubine of second cousin, so what? Madame had promised her that she would give her a wife position. Even if it was still possible, since she was not really married now, everything was still possible. I'll go to second cousin. She gritted her teeth and had made a decision in her heart. If Wen Shiqi couldn't help her, she would go to Wen Xian. Second cousin would definitely help her. However, she didn't want Wen Xian to help her. She wanted to win over third cousin. Anyway, she and second cousin had not officially consummated their marriage. Even if she married third cousin in the future, it would be okay. At most, she would cry in front of her uncle and aunt. Even if she couldn't marry third cousin as his legal wife, she could at least be his co-wife or concubine. The reason why she was so confident was that she heard the news that her father had been promoted a while ago. This time, if her father was promoted and managed to enter the capital city, the previous things between her and second cousin might be written off. There would be no problem for her to marry second cousin as his legal wife. However, it would not be so easy for her to marry third cousin. After all, she was engaged to second cousin. However, if he had some help, it would not be impossible. And Xiao Yenru was a very good help. In the past, as long as she had a chance, she would please Xiao Yenru and Madame of Duke Xing, because she wanted to use them at such a critical time. This time, she not only had to be busy, but also had to do a good job. Moreover, Dr. Chiu's matter had something to do with her. What? Change the household registration? When Xian put down the book in his hand in surprise and said in astonishment. He was the most leisurely one among the three brothers of the Wen's mansion. He was not as steady as the first young master, nor was he as talented as Wen Shiqi. In the past, he only dealt with some ordinary people, but his romantic character was not worse than that of some playboys. At this moment, although he was holding a book in his hand and sitting in his study, it was actually just a book for leisure, and it was even a book for romance. Now that his cousin was here, of course, he didn't want her to see it. Yes, second cousin, do you still remember Dr. Chiu? Gu Shishu stood in front of Wen Xian with a sad face. Her carefully dressed little face made Wen Xian itch to look at her. Although Gu Shishu had been engaged to him in the name of concubine, he couldn't be engaged to be his legal wife, so he could only look at Gu Shishu from a distance and couldn't get close to her. Even every time he deliberately got close to her, Gu Shishu would look as if he had done something wrong. He was indeed very affectionate to this cousin and didn't want to make her unhappy. However, his marriage had been delayed. Every time he was about to get married, something would happen. Even when the two families were about to visit each other to get married, a Miss even had an accident and lost her life. In this way, he was known as a wife-cursing man, and even people outside said that he was too tough to kill. His marriage had been delayed again and again, so that Madame Wen wanted to directly engage Gu Shishu to him and make her his legal wife, and she even leaked the news to Wen Xian. Wen Xian was also very satisfied, but he still had to wait for his uncle and aunt's opinion on the specific matters. In Wen Xian's heart, Gu Shishu was his woman. At this moment, when his woman was in trouble, he was very willing to help her. However, this matter was a little difficult, and he couldn't help her as an idle person. I remember Dr. Chiu, but why does he want to change his household registration? Wen Xian nodded when he mentioned Dr. Chiu. It was said that Dr. Chiu was related to his cousin indirectly, although they were far apart. When he had first moved to the capital city, Dr. Chiu had lived in his mansion and then went to Duke Xing's mansion. Wen Xian remembered him so clearly because he had been injured at that time, and it was Dr. Chiu who had cured his injury easily. He approved of Dr. Chiu's medical skills very much. Chapter 690. Remember in 1 second, 800 $say, net this is a wonderful free reading without a pop-up window. Second cousin, I just learned about it. It said that Dr. Chiu had killed someone in the village before. What if others know about it? Now he has entered Duke Xing's mansion. What should we do? Gu Shishu looked at Wen Xian with tears in her eyes and begged. The beauty was like a flower, and she was so understanding. Wen Xian's heart immediately ached, and he didn't bother to ask for the reason. He nodded repeatedly, okay, don't cry. Leave this to me. He also had a few scoundrel friends, so it wouldn't be difficult to change the household registration of an insignificant doctor. However, he suddenly remembered something, and his face sank as he asked, "Did you go to find third brother just now?" He always felt that the relationship between Gu Shiju and his third brother was unusual. Originally, he was jealous of his third brother in all aspects. If he knew that there was any relationship between Gu Shiju and his third brother, he would definitely not spare them. How could that be? I have engaged you long ago, so I naturally have to keep a distance from third cousin. How can I ask him first? If I want to ask, I should ask second cousin first. Even if second cousin can't help me, second cousin has to ask third cousin for me. Gu Shishu raised her eyes and looked at Wen Xian with great tenderness. This made Wen Xian very satisfied. He reached out and didn't care that the servant girl was still watching from the side. He held Gu Shishu in his arms and rubbed her. When he saw Gu Shishu push his hand away coquettishly, he laughed happily. Even though there was still the last barrier between the two of them, many things had already crossed the line. Not to mention Gu Shishu, even Lu Yi beside her was not surprised. At this time, she just lowered her head shyly and did not dare to look at the two people who were teasing and hugging each other. The situation was getting more and more unrestrained. It was 2 days later that Xiao Wanru found Dr. Chiu, and she asked Qing to get the news from Xiao Xuanzi. "Miss, what a coincidence. It said that Dr. Chiu is from Jiangzhou." Qing came in and reported. Xiao Wanru thought about it and smiled. Wasn't it a coincidence? Jiangzhou? No way. I've been in Jiangzhou for so many years, but I've never heard of a doctor named Dr. Chiu. Yu Jie said hurriedly. She really didn't know about other places, but she knew about Jiangzhou very well, especially the doctors in Jiangzhou. Mingqiu Nun was a doctor. How could Yu Jie, who followed Mingqiu Nun, not pay attention to the doctors in Jiangzhou? Wasn't Dr. Chiu a famous doctor in the south of the Yangtze River? Could it be that he was completely unknown? Jiangzhou is not Jiangnan. Chu Lu also raised a question. Although Jiangzhou and Jiangnan only had a one-word difference, it was still in the south as a whole. However, Jiangzhou was already a borderland, and there was still a big gap between it and Jiangnan in the middle of the south. Although Jiangzhou is not Jiangnan, it is not wrong to refer to it as such. As long as it is in the south, it can be said to be Jiangnan when it comes to the capital. Xiao Wanru said with a leisurely smile. She had just washed her hair. After stirring her black hair, she casually draped it over her shoulders. Her small face was as beautiful as the size of a palm, and her watery eyes were breathtaking. Only her eyes were deep. It seemed that the reason why Dr. Chiu came to the capital at the beginning had nothing to do with her. Otherwise, he wouldn't be from Jiangzhou. But Dr. Chiu is definitely not from Jiangzhou. Yu Jie thought for a while and said with certainty. Jiangzhou was a small place, and there were even fewer famous doctors. Most of them had contacts with each other. Yu Jie didn't think it was possible that Dr. Chiu was a famous doctor from Jiangzhou. "Miss, Xiao Xuanzi told me that if this Dr. Chiu is really not a famous doctor in Jiangzhou, someone must have changed his household registration. He said that he had to check it again before he could get the result." Qing said concisely. "Okay, go and tell Xiao Xuanzi that Dr. Chiu is definitely not from Jiangzhou. Ask him to check it again. By the way, ask him to ask Mingqiu Nun and tell her that the embroidery pattern on Dr. Chiu's needle bag is the same as Mingqiu Nun's needle bag, but it is a bright red orchid, which looks a little bloody." Xiao Wanru thought for a while and said, "It was impossible for Dr. Chiu's household registration to be in Jiangzhou. It was just a large area in Jiangnan, so it was really difficult to find Dr. Chiu." She had an intuition that Dr. Chiu was related to Mingqiu Nun. It was basically impossible for two identical needle bags to be the same. What was more, Dr. Chiu's needlework looked strange and gloomy. Mingqiu Nun should have some clues. Mingqiu Nun went to the mansion to treat Chu Luqian from time to time. It was much easier for Xiao Xuanzi to see Mingqiu Nun than for him. Yes, I'll inform Xiao Xuanzi now. Qing nodded and left. Needle bag. Yu Jie frowned and looked at Xiao Wanru hesitantly, looking like she wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Yu Jie, do you know something? Xiao Wanru raised her eyes and said with a smile. Compared with Yu Jie, who had been with Mingqiu Nun for a long time, she did know a lot less. Miss, Mingqiu Nun's needle bag seems to be handed down from Grandmaster. Yu Jie thought for a while and said, What about mine? Xiao Wanru blinked her watery eyes slightly and was not surprised by this answer. It seems to be handed down from Grandmaster. Yu Jie answered without stuttering this time. At that time, she saw Mingqiu Nun give the needle bag together with the needles to Xiao Wanru, and she was the one who tidied it up. That is to say, Dr. Chiu and Mingqiu Nun are probably from the same sect? Xiao Wanru raised her eyebrows and said with a smile. I think, maybe, but I have never heard Mingqiu Nun mention Dr. Chiu before. No, Mingqiu Nun basically didn't mention who her master was. She only occasionally mentioned Grandmaster. Yu Jie was a little hesitant this time because Mingqiu Nun mentioned so little that she couldn't remember it for a while. She even saw the needle bag, but she didn't remember it, so she couldn't connect it with Mingqiu Nun for a while. Miss, if Mingqiu Nun and Dr. Chiu are from the same sect, I think this Dr. Chiu must not be a good person. Otherwise, why did Mingqiu Nun never mention him? Moreover, why did he change his household registration when he came to the capital city? He is obviously not from Jiangzhou. Chu Lu thought for a while and said. Xiao Wanru nodded. She was also sure that Dr. Chiu could not be from Jiangzhou. But since he was not from Jiangzhou, why did he say that he was from Jiangzhou? 3 years ago, he came to the capital city, so he should have changed his household registration at that time. Since he changed his household registration at that time, it meant that he must not have come to the capital city for Wang Yishu. Wang Yishu's life was in the hands of Madame of Duke Xing. It was strange that Madame of Duke Xing could keep her for 3 years. In addition, Dr. Chiu's words that day seemed to imply that Wang Yishu was really remorseful. He meant that Wang Yishu was about to die, and her words were kind. He asked her to untie the knot in Wang Yishu's heart, have a good talk with her, and let her go without worries. It seemed that Dr. Chiu was really a good and compassionate adult. However, because the orchid on his needle bag was similar to Mingqiu Nun's, she sensed a fierce aura. She really couldn't believe that Dr. Chiu would be a good and compassionate first madam. After thinking about it carefully, she found that what he meant was that he wanted her to visit Wang Yishu. She raised the corners of her mouth silently and sneered in her heart. Wang Yishu was going to die, but she didn't die for 3 years. If she went to visit her at this time and something happened to her while visiting her, she would probably be blamed for everything, wouldn't she? It was a big deal to kill someone. It would even make all her previous efforts in vain, and she and Hao O would be trampled under the feet of Duke Xing's mansion again. It should be Madame of Duke Xing's scheme to plot against her with Wang Yishu's life. She could be sure that this scheme started 3 years ago, but at that time, she used a trick to make Duke Xing's mansion retreat step by step, catching them off guard. And Dr. Chiu definitely didn't come to the capital city for her. She got up from the couch, walked to the window, and pushed open the slightly closed window. A gust of cold wind immediately blew in from the window. Miss, your hair hasn't dried yet. How can you be exposed to the wind at this time? Yu Jie hurriedly came over to stop her. Xiao Wanru grabbed her hand and said, Go and call Qing back. In the cold wind, her black hair was blown up, and she felt a chill on her head. However, at the same time, she suddenly realized something, and a trace of gloominess flashed across the corners of her eyes. Dr. Chiu came to the capital city 3 years ago. If he didn't do it for her, who did he do it for? Yu Jie didn't react in time. Hurry up. Xiao Wanru let go of her hand and said with a smile, feeling suddenly enlightened. Yes, miss, I'll go right away. Yu Jie nodded, turned around, and walked out quickly. Chu Lu came over, closed the window and advised, Miss, you will have a headache if you are exposed to the wind like this. The wind in winter is much stronger than that in Jiangzhou. Xiao Wenru listened to her advice, turned around, walked to the dressing table and sat down. Chu Lu, come here and help me freshen up. I'm going out later. You still want to go out at this time? Miss, I'm afraid old madam won't agree if you go out now, right? Chu Lu looked out of the window and said. The cold wind whistled past outside, and it seemed that it might snow later. Recently, the weather had been cold for a while, and it would snow from time to time. Today's weather was even more oppressive. It didn't look like it was going to snow. The gloomy weather made it necessary to light up the room. What's more, it was almost dinner time, so she couldn't go out without a proper reason. It was not that Madame Dowager in the mansion cared much about her miss, but she kept her miss from going out. Everyone in the mansion didn't treat her miss as a family member. Although they didn't ground her miss, they didn't allow her to go out casually, which was no different from grounding her feet. Dress up as a servant girl. I'll go out with you, Jie, Xiao Wenru said. Dress up as a servant girl? Chu Lu was stunned for a moment and stopped combing the comb in her hand. She was very surprised. Yes, dress up as a servant girl. In this way, you don't have to ask for permission. You just need to say that you buy something for me. Xiao Wenru nodded, looked at herself in the mirror, and narrowed her watery eyes slightly. Old Madam didn't allow her to go out casually. If she needed a proper reason, she could go out secretly. Dr. Chio's matter was of great importance. Chapter 691. A complete copy. I will update the latest chapter on the Crown Princess's medical skills as soon as possible. After contacting Xiao Xuanzi, Qin soon got the news and asked Xiao Wenru to meet in a tea house. Xiao Wenru followed Yu Jie and left through the back door. The old maid at the back door had a good relationship with Yu Jie recently. Yu Jie would go out from the back door from time to time to buy some food and necessities for Xiao Wenru. Because Yu Jie was just a servant girl who always gave a lot of gifts to the old maid at the back door, when she saw Yu Jie going out this time, the old maid just glanced at the little servant girl behind her and let her go. In the past, when Yu Jie went out, she would occasionally take a little maid to help her carry things. Recently, 5th Miss Xiao was in the limelight. Even Madame of Duke Xing was locked up in the ancestral hall, and it was uncertain when she would be released. The old maids in the backyard did not dare to make things difficult for the people of the Piaoyun courtyard. They let them go quickly and even teased Yu Jie. When they came out of the back door, a simple carriage had already been parked at the door. Yu Jie and Xiao Wenru, who was dressed as a little maid, got on the carriage. Then the carriage moved forward. After a few turns, they came to the back door of a tea house. Xiao Xuanzi had been waiting at the back door for a long time. Seeing Xiao Wenru get off the carriage, he hurriedly came over with a smile and reached out to lead her in. Xiao Wenru nodded and followed him in. They entered from the back door and went up to the second floor. They then turned a corner on the second floor and went up to the third floor. Finally, they entered a private room on the third floor. This private room was very large, divided into an inner room and an outer room. Xiao Xuanzi stopped Yu Jie at the door of the inner room and pointed inside with a smile. Yu Jie stopped and stood outside with Xiao Xuanzi. Xiao Wenru entered the inner room. Chu Luchen was sitting lazily on a large chair near the window. He was dressed in a navy blue brocade robe, and his black hair was tied up casually. He did not wear a crown, which made him look more leisurely and casual. There was a curtain hanging down from the window. The light in the room was on, but it was not the brightest kind. There was a kind of hazy color, but it made people feel that young Master Mozhang was like jade. Even with such a heavy color, when he wore it, it made people feel that he was handsome and elegant. This person really looked good no matter what kind of clothes he wore. Of course, if he were to sit more upright, he would definitely look more elegant. However, he was reclining there as if he didn't have any bones in his body, which made him look like a ruffian. Sit. Hearing the voice, Chu Luchen said without looking up. He reached out to pour a cup of tea for Xiao Wenru and pushed it to the opposite side. Xiao Wenru sat down opposite him, picked up the tea and took a sip. As the warm tea entered her stomach, it immediately diluted the coldness outside. It was as if the room had eliminated all the coldness outside the door. I heard that you have something urgent to discuss with me. What's the matter? Chu Luchen asked lazily with his long and narrow eyes. Did Xiao Xuanzi tell you about Dr. Chiu? Xiao Wanru didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. What's the use of a mere doctor? Why are you in such a hurry to see Ben Wang? Chu Luchen said with a smile. His handsome face seemed to be plated with a layer of excitement, which made him extremely charming. It seemed that he was in a good mood. In the past, he was the one who made appointments with Xiao Wanru or directly stopped her. He had never seen Xiao Wanru specially make an appointment with him. Your Highness, I'm talking about serious business. Xiao Wanru said helplessly. Isn't what I'm talking about serious business? Don't worry, a doctor can't make waves. I'm much better now, and I won't let other doctors treat me at will. Chu Luchen narrowed his eyes and said with a smile. Hearing his words, Xiao Wanru was relieved and knew that he had understood what she meant. Your Highness, do you also think that Dr. Chiu came to the capital city for you? Such a good doctor, it seems that he is also a famous doctor. When he just arrived at the Deputy Prime Minister's mansion, he cured the second young master of the Deputy Prime Minister's mansion. It is said that the second young master of the Deputy Prime Minister's mansion was also injured by a group of doctors before. As soon as Dr. Chiu came, he almost recovered after a few needles without applying any medicine. Chu Luchen looked at Xiao Wanru with his beautiful eyes and said slowly. He turned the teacup in his hand and showed a sneer with hostility on his thin lips. He really neglected Dr. Chiu. If Xiao Wanru hadn't asked Xiao Xuanzi to check again and again this time, he really wouldn't have found that there was such a fish that slipped through the net. He cured the second young master of the Deputy Prime Minister's mansion at that time. Is he going to recommend him to the Imperial Palace? Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. Although she had guessed something, she was not so clear about it after all. It should be the reason. 3 years ago, I had been in poor health. My uncle and Imperial grandmother asked someone to find a famous doctor to treat me. This Dr. Chiu should have come to the capital city at that time, but I didn't expect that he came after Ming Qiu-nun. At that time, Ming Qiu-nun's treatment had been effective, so I didn't want anyone else to treat me. Chu Luchen said. What's more, there's also a doctor who was recommended to me. He even treated me until I vomited blood and worsened my condition. Therefore, Dr. Chiu came to the capital city in order to deal with Chu Luchen. Everyone in the world knew that Chu Luchen was in poor health, and they also knew that Chu Luchen was looking for famous doctors all over the world. Dr. Chiu came to the capital city at the right time, but he was a little unlucky. In addition, Chu Liuchen's health was even worse because of the new imperial physician. Xiao Wanru hesitated for a moment and said, Then, was he really sent by Prime Minister Wen? Prime Minister Wen gave her a bad feeling. In her last life, Prime Minister Wen also connived at Madame Wen and Gu Shishu to deal with her, and later even drove her out of the Wen's mansion. But thinking about it carefully, Prime Minister Wen did not seem to plot against Chu Luchen. Moreover, when Chu Luchen was in power, the Wen's mansion was still standing. No, it's the cousin miss of the Prime Minister. Chu Luchen smiled. Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat and she asked anxiously, Gu Shishu? Zhuozhua, how do you know the name of the cousin of Prime Minister Wen's manor? Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile. His pearl-like face looked more and more handsome and flawless in the light. I met her before, and she even snatched the hairpin from me. Xiao Wanru lowered her head uneasily and inexplicably felt a little confused. She subconsciously avoided Chu Liuchen's beautiful eyes. Being looked at by him like this, she felt as if there were thousands of affections, which was extremely attractive. Oh, it's because of this. I thought it was the third young master Wen. Chu Luchen said meaningfully. Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. She clenched the handkerchief in her hand and then slowly relaxed. She raised her watery eyes and changed the topic with a serious face. Gu Shishu is the cousin miss of the Prime Minister Wen's mansion, but she is just a girl in the boudoir. Why did she find a doctor for such a purpose? No matter how she looked at it, Gu Shishu had nothing to do with it. Of course, this woman doesn't know. She should have been bewitched by someone to invite this doctor surnamed Chiu to the capital city and then send him to the Imperial Palace. Coincidentally, I don't need him, but Duke Xing's mansion next to me needs him, So Dr. Chiu is lent to your Duke Xing's mansion. Chu Luchun narrowed his handsome eyes and said. His words were very straightforward, which was almost all that Dr. Chiu had done after he came to the capital city. Xiao Wenru fell silent and frowned tightly. She knew what Chu Luchun meant. If Dr. Chiu came to the capital city because of Chu Luchun, then after he became useless to Chu Luchun, the candidate was herself. Dr. Chiu wanted to use Wang Yishu to deal with her. At that time, she had just entered Duke Xing's mansion and would inevitably live in Duke Xing's mansion. At this time, if the fact that she had killed Wang Yishu was exposed, she would definitely not end well. But at that time, she acted faster than Madam of Duke Xing and old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion, so that their scheme failed and Wang Yishu lived for 3 more years. In the past 3 years, she had been bedridden, which was also caused by Dr. Chiu. His needles were not to cure Wang Yishu, but to make her suffer. This went on for 3 years. Now that he had come down the mountain, this scheme was going to fall on him again. After thinking for a while, Xiao Wenru asked again with inexplicably complicated feelings, "Who bewitched her?" Who else could it be except those from your Duke Xing's mansion? But it can be seen from the fact that they sent her to Duke Xing's mansion so readily after the incident. We just need to find out who in Duke Xing's mansion gets along well with her. Chu Luchun said casually. It was not difficult to find out this matter, and he even needed to inquire about it in the mansion. It's Xiao Yinru. It must be her. Xiao Wenru said with certainty and slightly tilted her face. Chu Liuchun's eyes fell on her face, making her feel that she could not ignore him. I heard that when the children of the Wen's mansion and Duke Xing's mansion were young, they opened a side door so that they could come and go at will. Gu Shishu should have gotten along with Xiao Yinru at that time. Although the two families blocked the side door later, they should still be on good terms. A trace of coldness flashed in Xiao Wenru's eyes, and she only felt a chill slowly rising from her heart. She finally understood why Gu Shishu couldn't tolerate her so much in the last life. Logically speaking, after when Shichi died, she was just a widow with no power or influence and had no children. Why did Gu Shishu couldn't tolerate her so much and insisted on slandering her so that she was driven out of the Wen's mansion? Her existence had nothing to do with Gu Shishu at all, and such a thing shouldn't have happened. But it turned out that the root of all this was Duke Xing's mansion and Xiao Yinru. She narrowed her eyes slightly and restrained a trace of bloodthirsty coldness at the bottom of her eyes. Sure enough, everything about her was related to Duke Xing's mansion. It was they who stepped her into a hopeless situation step by step, and the last blow was made by Xiao Yinru herself. When she was cut in half at the waist, her whole body seemed to be bleeding. The blood converged into a stream and meandered under her body. At that time, she was actually still alive. What's wrong with you? Finding that her lips, which used to be delicate and beautiful, suddenly became as pale as snow, Chu Luchun reached out and held her hand. Sensing that her hand was also cold without any warmth, he frowned and asked unhappily. He exerted force and held her hand tightly. Chapter 692. The warmth in her hand woke Xiao Wenru up from the bloody scene. She took a deep breath and suppressed the blood rolling in her eyes. Since it was an irreconcilable hatred, there was no need to resolve it. She, who had climbed out of the Jiuyou blood prison, didn't intend to have a good relationship with Duke Xing's mansion in this life. I'm fine. She struggled and tried to get rid of Chu Liuchun's hand, but her hand was held tightly by him and he didn't intend to let go at all. She raised her eyes to look at Chu Luchun, only to find that he raised his eyes with a hint of scrutiny. She felt inexplicably guilty. Tell me, what happened to you just now? Chu Luchun didn't intend to let her go and asked. It suddenly occurred to me that it must be another scheme of Duke Xing's mansion. They must want to plot against me, kill Wang Yishu, and then put the blame on me. When I saw Dr. Chiu, he repeatedly asked me to go to see Wang Yishu, saying that she was kind when she was about to die. Xiao Wenru calmed herself down and analyzed in an orderly manner. Then let her die in an obvious way. Chu Luchun said casually. Xiao Wenru's heart skipped a beat, and she unconsciously turned her head away. Every time she looked into Chu Liuchun's eyes, she always felt a little uncomfortable. There seemed to be thousands of stars jumping in his handsome eyes, which people couldn't see clearly. But there seemed to be thousands of tenderness in his eyes occasionally, which made her blush inexplicably. What do you mean by letting her die in an obvious way? Didn't they say that they would kill Wang Yishu when you went to visit her and then put the blame on you? You can ask Qing Er to go in with you. She has a way. Chu Luchen said with an evil smile. Of course, there is another way, which I think is better. You can deal with it directly with me. You'd better ask Qing Er to do it. Your Highness, it's not justifiable for you to do it. Xiao Wanru shook her head and refused his second very direct proposal. Although she now had the reputation of rescuing Chu Luchen, they couldn't be too involved in each other's affairs. Do you mean that I haven't given you a title yet? Chu Luchen squinted at her and said disapprovingly. Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly lowered her head and said, Your Highness, you must be joking. I'm not joking. Since you're bound to marry into my mansion and become my woman, it doesn't matter if you get a title earlier or later. Chu Luchen said indifferently. Your Highness, don't act rashly. Xiao Wanru was shocked. She grabbed Chu Luchen's hand and said anxiously. This was Prince Chen who could do anything. Xiao Wanru did not dare to let him do it. She felt that she was able to deal with the affairs in the backyard of Duke Xing's mansion. Since this kind of thing was hidden in the dark, she could naturally do it in the dark. With the help of Chu Luchen's people, she could actually do better. You really don't want my help? Chu Luchen asked with a smile and a lazy voice. No. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and inexplicably thought of a series of strange scenes in her mind. Was it the Imperial Palace where blood flowed like a river? The steps and the Imperial Palace were full of women's corpses. It's okay. Let's talk about it after you marry into my mansion. You're not young now. If you're engaged, you should marry into the mansion earlier. In fact, I'm not young either. Chu Luchen enjoyed the feeling of Xiao Wanru taking the initiative to hold his hand. He narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, seeming to have a good temper. Xiao Wanru blushed and hurriedly threw away Chu Luchen's hand as if she was holding a piece of red-hot iron in her hand. However, Chu Luchen was faster than her. He held her hand again and said, What's wrong? When you need me, you cling to me. When you don't need me, you throw me away. Zhuozhua, it's not a good habit to throw me away after using me. As he said, he winked at Xiao Wanru teasingly, looking like a gentle and harmless sunny boy. Your Highness, you're a human. How can you throw me away so easily? Xiao Wanru blushed and tried hard to pull her hand away. He said it as if she had done something evil to abandon her husband and son. As soon as this idea came to her mind, Xiao Wanru's face became redder and she felt that she was crazy. How could she have such an idea? Chu Luchen's words actually made her think of this. Oh, that means you won't abandon me, right? Chu Luchen was satisfied. Seeing her blushing face, he stopped in time and let go of her delicate little hand. He leaned back contentedly and looked at Xiao Wanru with a smile, but did not say a word. Since he understood his intention, Chu Luchen felt that he could act faster. He had always been quick to act when he saw the target. Of course, he couldn't scare her. After all, they had the earliest relationship, and Xiao Wanru had agreed to be his shield. So be it. It was just a shield for a lifetime. Moreover, he didn't intend to let his shield really be eliminated by others. Since she had agreed to be his shield, she should do it forever. This was their agreement at the beginning, wasn't it? Chu Luchen was very at ease. Looking at Xiao Wanru's little face which had recovered its blush, he became more and more complacent. Just now, he was very dissatisfied when he saw that not only her face was pale, but even her lips were also as white as snow. Since he was dissatisfied, of course, more people would not be happy. He tapped his fingers on the table twice and said, Xiao Yinru has a good relationship with Chu Liuzhou and Chu Liwei. It must be one of them's plot. My existence blocked their way. Xiao Wanru was shocked and raised her head in a hurry. She suddenly realized that the fight for the throne in the last life had actually begun long ago. Your Highness, what do you mean? I didn't care at first. Anyway, with such a sick body, I can live as long as I can. Chu Luchen said casually. Xiao Wanru frowned in disapproval. In fact, When she saw Chu Luchan for the first time, she had such a feeling that Prince Chen didn't care about his life. It was up to him whether to take the medicine or not, and it was up to him to decide whether to take it or not. At this time, when she heard him say it himself, she felt a kind of palpitation in her heart, which was very uncomfortable. She tried her best to avoid this kind of statement. "Your Highness, your illness can also be cured by medicine. Aren't you much better now?" Xiao Wanru suppressed the inexplicable palpitation in her heart and asked. "I'm fine now. Now, this prince naturally has to live well. I can't let you be a widow before you even marry me." Chu Luchan reached out his hand and gently pressed her willowy eyebrows, saying gently with a smile, "You always frown at such a young age. When you get older in the future, you will look old." "Your Highness." Xiao Wanru reached out to push him away and said angrily, "This king is serious. This king has already acknowledged you to Imperial grandmother. If this king loses his life at this time, then if I die at this time, given Imperial grandmother's character, she will definitely ask you to be a widow for me." Chu Luchan retracted his hand with a smile with a somewhat complacent look. Xiao Wanru looked at him speechlessly. She didn't know why he was so complacent when he cursed himself to die. It seemed that he was not like the cunning Prince Qin in the past at all. "Your Highness, do you mean that you will be fine?" She rolled her watery eyes and caught another hint of meaning in his words. "Of course I will be fine. Since they can plot it, I can also plot it. It depends on whose means are more powerful." Chu Luchan said indifferently. His eyes were indifferent and elegant, as if he was not talking about a rebellious thing like plotting for the throne. Xiao Wanru's heart beat faster. It was the first time that she had heard Chu Liuchen's thoughts clearly from his mouth. In her last life, she didn't know why Chu Luchan didn't give up and fight for the throne. Moreover, he did trample on everyone. As the emperor's nephew, he actually defeated the emperor's son. It was not a simple matter to explain the bloodshed in this matter. She bit her lip and suppressed the panic in her heart. A son couldn't be compared to a nephew. What was the reason? "Well, are you interested in watching the beautiful rivers and mountains hand in hand with me in the future?" Chu Luchan asked with a smile. Under the light, his eyes looked not only gentle as jade, but also seemed to be a little doting. "Your Highness, if you fail..." Xiao Wanru heard that her voice was a little vague. "Don't worry. Even if I fail, I will protect you as my shield. I will definitely protect you. If anyone hurts you, I will sacrifice my blood." Chu Luchan chuckled in a low voice and said casually, "You are my shield. I can lose anyone, but I can't lose my shield. After all, it was you who pestered me to be my shield." His words were extremely ambiguous. Although Xiao Wanru was worried, she couldn't help feeling a little ashamed and annoyed at this time. She gritted her teeth and said, "Your Highness, thank you for your kindness." "It doesn't matter. You're welcome," Chu Luchan said lazily. Then he stood up, walked to the window on the other side, looked out of the window, and said with a smile, "It's really snowing. Zhuozhua, have you ever seen such heavy snow in Jiangzhou?" Xiao Wanru got up helplessly and walked to the window to have a look. As expected, it was snowing heavily outside. It was rare to see such heavy snow even in the capital city. Each snowflake was huge and fell from the sky. It was beautiful. "Your Highness, I have lived in the capital city for 3 years." Xiao Wanru bit her lip and reminded him helplessly. Although it was rare to see such heavy snow, she had seen it a few times in the 3 years she had lived in the capital city. She was not as surprised as she was when she just arrived in the capital city. The doctor surnamed Qiu has changed his nationality again. He is no longer from Jiangzhou. Someone must have done it again. Chu Luchan looked out of the window with a smile, but said something completely different from what he had said just now. The meaning of his words changed so quickly that Xiao Wanru was stunned for a moment before she turned her head in a hurry. There was a trace of cold and unforgettable coldness in her watery eyes. "Your Highness, do you mean that they are going to deal with me?" Chapter 693. If you can't deal with it, just tell me. I can clear it for you. Chu Luchan said lazily. Thank you, Your Highness. I got it. Xiao Wanru bit her lip. Well, it's getting late. You should go back now. When we are confirmed, I can come to Duke Xing's mansion to look for you. Chu Luchen turned around and walked to the chair where he had sat before. There was a cloak on it. He picked it up and shook it open. It was a very simple cloak, which was not big and looked very plain. It was definitely not Chu Luchen's. Holding the cloak, he walked to Xiao Wanru, put the cloak on her, and tied the rope in front of her neck. This cloak is very ordinary. It's snowing outside. His voice was gentle, and the warm air almost blew to Xiao Wanru's ears. Xiao Wanru's face turned red, and she subconsciously pulled the hem of the cloak. With a bang in her head, she lowered her head tightly and did not dare to look at Chu Luchen's face. After helping Xiao Wanru put on the cloak, Chu Luchen took 2 steps back and looked at it. Then he nodded with a smile and said, "Okay. Be careful on the way." His voice was elegant and gentle. Seeing him step back, Xiao Wanru breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly stepped back. After bowing to him, she turned around and left in a hurry, as if the longer she stayed, the hotter her face would be. Yujie had been waiting outside the door, holding a cloak similar to Xiao Wanru's in her hand. Seeing Xiao Wanru come out, she hurriedly followed her. Xiao Xuanzi led them out and then sent them to the carriage. After that, he turned around and went back to the 3rd floor. On the 3rd floor, Chu Luchen stood by the window, which happened to be able to see the back door. He saw Xiao Wanru get on the carriage and leave. "Master, the 5th miss has gone back." Xiao Xuanzi entered the door and reported. "Chu Liuzhou should not be out of the palace at this time, right? Let's do it today. The weather is good today." Chu Luchen looked at the falling snowflakes outside the window. His voice was very pleasant, but it was as cold as the strings of a zither in winter. "Yes, I'll go to prepare now." Xiao Xuanzi understood and answered hurriedly, "Master, do you want to go back to the mansion first?" Previously, the Empress Dowager had sent someone to tell her that she didn't need to enter the palace. "I'm going to the palace to see Imperial grandmother now." Chu Luchen chuckled and his eyes turned dark. His jade-like handsome face, because of this thick layer of black, looked cold and bloodthirsty. Under the light and snow, it made people shudder. Xiao Wanru came back as calmly as she went out. The old maid guarding the back door almost went to sleep. Hearing the knock on the door, she got up reluctantly and opened the door. Fortunately, Yujie gave her the fruits she bought outside, which made the old maid look a little better. After asking them to go back, she went to lock the door. Xiao Wanru followed Yujie to the Piaoyun courtyard. The snow was very heavy, and the wind was also very strong. The wind blew against their faces, causing the 2 of them to sway. Not long after, the road was already piled up with snow. Xiao Wanru went out this time to warn Chu Luchen. This time, not only did she achieve her goal, but she also found that Dr. Chiu had changed his household registration. Knowing that this was a precursor to taking action, she thought about it as she walked. She was a little distracted and almost fell several times. Yujie had no choice but to help her walk slowly and slow down. They walked much slower than usual on the way to the Piaoyun courtyard. It was getting dark. Fortunately, it was a snowy day, which reflected some light and could be vaguely seen. However, the road was piled up with snow, and it was very difficult to walk on it. After walking for a while, Xiao Wanru wiped her forehead and stopped. "Miss, there seems to be someone over there. I think." Yujie pulled Xiao Wanru to hide behind a tree on one side and said in a low voice. Xiao Wanru raised her head and didn't find anything, but she didn't come out of her hiding place. Yujie's eyesight had always been very good. Since she found something, there must be a reason. As expected, they didn't wait here for a long time before they saw a figure sneaking in front of them. It could be seen that this person didn't expect it to snow so heavily, so he didn't prepare any protective clothes. At first glance, they could tell that he was not a good person. When they got closer, they could see that he was a tall man. There was a man in the backyard? Xiao Wanru was shocked and retreated further behind the tree. The color of their cloaks was relatively light, and they were covered with snow at this time. They hid behind the tree motionlessly. In addition to the light problem, it was really difficult for people to find that there was someone behind the tree. Moreover, this person looked very sneaky, so how could he stop to take a closer look? Just like that, the 2 of them watched as the man left. It was not until he was completely out of sight that Xiao Wanru came out from behind the tree. "Is it Wang Xingxue?" Xiao Wanru asked. She didn't see it very clearly just now. "It's that child Wang. Why is he here at this time? It seems that he sneaked in. What is he doing here?" Yu Jie saw it more clearly than Xiao Wanru, so she immediately muttered to herself in confusion. He shouldn't be here at this time, not to mention that this was the backyard of Duke Xing's mansion. Wang Xingxue seldom came to see Wang Yishu, and he had no affection for his sister. Now he seldom came to the mansion to see Wang Yishu. Even if he came, he just used Wang Yishu's name to please Madam of Duke Xing, Old Madam, and other masters in the mansion. He was so poor that he didn't have a good reputation in Duke Xing's mansion, and even the servants didn't take him seriously. In fact, it was not early at this time. With the snow, it became increasingly gloomy. If Wang Xingxue came early, he would leave early when he saw it was snowing. It had been snowing for a while. If he came when it was snowing, it would be even more impossible. If there was nothing urgent, why would he come to the backyard on a snowy day? It was because the management of the backyard was in a mess now, so he took advantage of the loophole. Looking at the way he came, she found that it was indeed the direction of Wang Yishu's courtyard, and the way he went out was indeed the Chuehua Gate. Moving her stiff feet, she walked forward slowly with the help of Yu Jie, while thinking about what had happened just now. It was indeed strange that Wang Xingxue appeared in the backyard of Duke Xing's mansion at this time. Why did he come to see Wang Yishu? An idea suddenly came to her mind, and her watery eyes flickered. Could it be that the previous idle chess piece had worked? Wang Xingxue and Wang Yishu were not stupid. They suspected Duke Xing's mansion, so they met in private without letting others know? That's great. It's time for me to meet Wang Yishu. When Xiao Wanru returned to the Piaoyun courtyard, Chu Lu had already prepared hot water. After Xiao Wanru washed up, Chu Lu helped her sit down on the couch and put a heater in her arms. After taking a sip of hot water, Xiao Wanru felt as if she had come back to life. She put down the tea in her hand, looked at Qing, and said, "Qing, go and find out what Wang Yishu is doing now." "Yes, I'll go now." Qing nodded and left. Chu Lu and Qing Yu prepared dinner for Xiao Wanru. After taking a few bites, Xiao Wanru asked the two maids to leave and let them have dinner by themselves. Leaning against the couch, Xiao Wanru held the small heater in her arms and carefully recalled what she had seen just now. It was related to Wang Yishu, but she didn't know what it was. Dr. Chiu had made it clear that he was going to take action against her. In order to avoid being traced back to Dr. Chiu, someone had secretly changed his household register. The purpose of changing the household register was to eliminate the traces of Dr. Chiu. Even if Wang Yishu had something to do with Dr. Chiu in the end, it would not involve too much or even have anything to do with the person behind the scenes. In order to deal with Chu Luchen, Dr. Chiu randomly chose Jiangzhou. She happened to be from Jiangzhou and was familiar with Jiangzhou. Or it could be said that not only she was familiar with Jiangzhou, but also the people of the Qin's mansion who had followed her back to the capital city at that time were familiar with Jiangzhou. Therefore, Dr. Chiu changed the household register in Jiangzhou. Xiao Yanru and Madame of Duke Xing must have planned to use Wang Yishu to deal with her, make Wang Yishu have an accident and even lose her life, and then put the blame on her, who went to visit Wang Yishu. But there was one thing that she still didn't understand. How did they control Wang Yishu's death? How could they let Wang Yishu die when she went to visit her? After thinking about it, she found that Dr. Chiu was the key. Could it be that Dr. Chiu's acupuncture skill was unique? It seemed that she had to ask Mingqiu Nun to explain it to her. If Dr. Chiu's acupuncture skill really had such an effect, Wang Yishu would die when she went to see Wang Yishu. If it had happened 3 years ago, it would have been flawless. However, it had been delayed for 3 years because of her sudden intervention. As long as Wang Xingxue and Wang Yishu were not really fools, they should be able to find some clues with a little help from her in secret, shouldn't they? After all, Wang Yishu had pretended to faint at that time. Since she was not really sick, why did her health deteriorate day by day after she returned to the Qin's mansion and she couldn't even get up from the bed? Moreover, Dr. Chiu had been treating her. Didn't Wang Yishu and Wang Xingxue suspect it? Now that they suspected it, what would they do? Xiao Wenru frowned slightly and vaguely felt that she had caught a clue. Madame of Duke Xing and Xiao Yenru had been plotting against her and thought that they had everything under their control. They had delayed the thing that they intended to frame her for 3 years. Did they really think that Wang Yishu was just a tool who knew nothing? It was just that no one had pointed it out, so she couldn't think of it at the moment. Now Wang Xingxue behaved stealthily. It seemed that he had gained something, and she was happy to see them suffer losses. Qing came back very late, but she also got some news. Wang Yishu was still awake at this time and was talking with her maid about what Wang Xingxue had done just now. Sure enough, Wang Xingxue went to see his sisters secretly instead of anyone else in the mansion. Qing thought, Wang Xingxue went to see my sisters secretly instead of anyone else in the mansion. Miss, I saw that Miss Wang had been touching something under the pillow. She touched it from time to time and then let it go. Then she touched it again and let it go again. When I went there, they were about to sleep. They didn't talk much and only mentioned that it was inconvenient for Child Wang to go back because of the snow outside. But even if they didn't talk much, Miss Wang touched it at least 10 times. It can be seen that she attached great importance to it or took it very seriously. Qing said with certainty. She had learned this kind of secret investigation method and was good at finding some problems that others could not find easily from others' behaviors and words. Chapter 694. It was very dark. In fact, it was not too late at this time. Chu Liuzhou came out of the Empress's palace, looked at the sky outside, and frowned tightly. He had entered the palace in the evening to talk with the Empress. When he entered the palace, it hadn't snowed yet. Now it was snowing and it was snowing heavily. In just a short time, the road was covered with snow. There was a distance from here to the gate of the palace. He did not feel it in the past, but the current situation was really unpleasant. It would be more and more inconvenient to wait any longer. He walked down the steps, and the little eunuch followed closely with an umbrella. There were also palace guards to protect him. A group of people surrounded Chu Liuzhou and walked to the gate of the palace. Chu Liuzhou walked much slower than usual, frowning all the time and in a bad mood. Just now, the Empress showed him the list of the consort selection, but Xiao Yenru's name was not on it. He had planned to marry Xiao Yenru, and he had always felt that it was not a problem for him to marry Xiao Yenru. He had even been very close to Duke Xing, thinking that Duke Xing would be his force in the future, and sometimes he would even protect Duke Xing. The Empress's words still rang in his ears, and he knew that he should listen to her. What happened to Xiao Yenru in the palace, even though Xiao Jie was finally blamed for it, and Xiao Jie was willing to take the responsibility, many people knew about it, including Chu Luiyue himself and even honored consort Chu. Although they did not say it out for their own reasons. But with so many people knowing it, the position of Princess of Prince Zhou should not be left to her. But he was still a little unwilling. Duke Xing's force was not small, and he was really unwilling to give up like this. He even felt that not only he was unwilling, but also Chu Luiyue was unwilling. But now Chu Liyue's situation was similar to his, so he was afraid that he could not give her the position of princess. But what about the concubine? Your Highness, Prince Qin is here. The little eunuch reminded him. Chu Liuzhou looked up and found that he had arrived at the gate of the palace. Along the long passage between the two palace gates, he saw Chu Luchen getting off the carriage outside, and a mocking smile appeared on his lips. However, he quickly restrained himself and strode out. At the carriage, Chu Luchen held Xiao Xuanzi's hand and moved down very carefully and slowly. Indeed, it could be regarded as moving. Even though there was a small stool under him, and even though Xiao Xuanzi held up his hands for fear of accidentally falling the sick and weak Prince Qin, the speed at which Prince Qin got off the carriage was almost as slow as a snail, which could be regarded as a ghost speed. Even though the guards at the gate of the palace did not look sideways, they also felt tired for Prince Qin, very, very tired. In fact, the carriage had been here for a while. The speed at which Prince Qin got off the carriage he was indeed a little slow, but he had never been this fast in the past. In this kind of snowy weather, it was normal for him to be slower. Chu Luchen managed to get on the carriage with Xiao Xuanzi's help and stood still in the carriage. He took out a handkerchief from his arms and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Needless to say, the amount of effort he used to dismount from the horse was already quite tiring. Third brother. Chu Liuzhou had already walked out of the long passage in the palace and said very intimately. Outside the palace gate, the coachman of Prince Zhou's mansion saw his master coming, hurriedly drove the carriage over and waited beside the carriage of Prince Chen's mansion. Second brother. Chu Luchen said with a smile. It seemed that he was in a good mood and did not show a cold face to Chu Liuzhou. Third brother, why did you come to the palace at this time? You'd better rest in your own mansion in such weather. Chu Liuzhou looked at the sky and then looked at him and said with concern. I came to see Imperial grandmother and will go back from the palace later. Chu Luchen explained. Why did you come out in such weather? You can come to see Imperial grandmother at any time. You went in at this time and made her worried. Chu Liuzhou rebuked him. It's my fault. Chu Luchen nodded readily and said, forget it. I'd better go back first and come to see Imperial grandmother tomorrow. That's good. Chu Liuzhou nodded and said in a good mood. In the past, when Chu Luchen was in front of others, he was also as gentle as jade, but only these brothers knew how mean and arrogant Chu Luchen was, which made them feel embarrassed. Fortunately, he was in front of others now, so he should listen to their kind advice. There were many people at the gate of the palace, and more people saw him and his brother getting along well. He believed that his father would also know that he and Chu Luchen got along well tomorrow and would be very happy about it. Just because his father valued him, he had to be on good terms with Chu Luchen. In the past, it was rare for others to see such a scene of them being brothers. Chu Liuzhou felt that he could play along with Chu Luchen for a while. Third brother, second brother, it's getting late. Let's all go back. It's so cold that I can feel the bones. Cough, cough. Speaking of this, Chu Luchen turned his head and coughed. Chu Liuzhou was a little embarrassed because Chu Luchen interrupted him, but seeing his current appearance, he immediately said with concern, Third brother, you're right. You really need to have a good rest. You can't be exposed to the wind here anymore. Third brother, please. He gestured Chu Luchen to go back to the carriage first. Second brother, please cough, cough. Chu Luchen coughed again and stepped back to the side of the road. Prince, please step back a little more. You may be coughing because of the wind. Xiao Xuanzi advised cautiously. Chu Liuzhou looked at the position facing the palace gate, and then looked at the long passage. A trace of a complacent smile flashed across his eyes. The position of the palace gate was not a good position. In winter, it was such a snowy season, and the cold wind blew over. It was much colder than other places. Originally, he wanted to have a chat with Chu Luchen for a while, but it seemed that this invalid couldn't stand it anymore. Well, he'd better go back early, lest this invalid got sick again tomorrow. In fact, it was his fault. Third brother, then I'll leave first. Chu Liuzhou said with a smile, cupped his hands to Chu Luchen, and then turned to walk to his carriage. Looking at Chu Liuchen's appearance, it seemed that he couldn't get on the carriage for a while. Chu Liuzhou didn't have the patience to accompany him to be exposed to the cold wind at the door. Speaking of which, the wind was really cold. If it kept pouring in like this, his body couldn't stand it. The carriage of Prince Zhou's mansion was parked at the side of Prince Chen's mansion. Both carriages faced the wide palace gate. Seeing that Prince Chen was still coughing while supporting Xiao Xuanzi, the coachman of Prince Chen's mansion was very perceptive and drove his carriage to the side to make room. The carriage of Prince Zhou's mansion occupied the position at the gate. Seeing that Chu Liuzhou was coming over, the coachman drove the carriage closer to him fawningly. The carriage stopped in front of Chu Liuzhou. Chu Liuzhou got in the carriage. Hearing the more horrified voice behind him, he turned his head in the carriage and asked with a very concerned look, Third brother, are you okay? He put his hand on the door of the carriage and didn't get in. His attention was all on Chu Luchen, who was coughing so hard that he couldn't get up. Although he was happy in his heart, he looked very concerned. The change happened at this time. A horse in front of the carriage of Prince Zhou's mansion suddenly raised its hooves and roared loudly. Chu Liuzhou, who was standing on the shaft of the carriage, was caught off guard and fell heavily from the carriage in front of the palace gate. Everyone was stunned. The horse's hooves fell and stepped on Chu Liuzhou, who fell to the ground and couldn't get up. If it really stepped on Chu Liuzhou, it was possible that he would be trampled to death on the spot. Quick, save my second brother. Chu Luchun held Xiao Xuanzi's hand and said loudly. Several guards at the palace gate immediately reacted. One of them reacted very quickly. He pulled out the sword at his waist and directly threw it at the horse's hooves. Another 2 guards went over and pulled Chu Liuzhou, who fell to the ground and couldn't get up for a while, out of the carriage. The sword was so fast that the horse's front hooves fell and happened to be stuck on the horse's hooves. The horse roared in pain and fell down softly. Fortunately, Chu Liuzhou had been pulled away by 2 guards at this time. Kick, go and report it to my uncle and the empress. Chu Luchun came over with Xiao Xuanzi's help. He held his chest and ordered anxiously. A eunuch at the palace gate had already gone inside to report it. Prince Zhou had an accident at the palace gate. No one dared to mention it. Chu Luchun squatted down to look at Chu Liuzhou. This time, Chu Luchun really fell hard. He fell straight off the carriage and fell heavily on the snow. Although the snow was soft, Chu Liuzhou obviously fell in a very wrong way. He twisted his body and fell down. Looking at his left leg, which was also twisted, Chu Luchun knew that Chu Liuzhou's leg was injured. It seemed that it was not just a twist that made him fall in such an awkward position. Chu Liuzhou asked someone to find a soft couch for Chu Liuzhou and asked someone to report it again. No one noticed that the coachman of Prince Zhou's mansion also fell to the ground and was also unconscious at this time. Chu Liuzhou also fell from the carriage. His place was surrounded by people, but no one paid attention to the coachman at all. Chu Liuzhou's soft couch was carried to the Imperial Institute of Medicine. Chu Luchun held Xiao Xuanzi's hand and walked to the Imperial Institute of Medicine, coughing several times at each step. At this time, even though he was weak, he couldn't leave at will. The imperial physicians in the Imperial Institute of Medicine had also received the news. When Chu Liuzhou came over, they hurriedly asked him to diagnose and invited the weak and sick Prince Qin to the greenhouse. He didn't look very well. If he continued to freeze like this, he would probably have an accident. The empress came the fastest. As soon as she entered the room and saw Chu Liuzhou's current miserable appearance, she immediately burst into tears. It was the nanny beside her who persuaded her to go to one side to have a rest first and let the imperial physicians treat him. Later, the Empress Dowager also came. When she came, Chu Liuzhou had been diagnosed to have broken his leg. It was true that he had broken his leg. After hearing the news, the Empress Dowager sighed helplessly and turned to see her other grandson. Hearing that Chu Luchun had a relapse and also lay down at this time, she was as anxious as the empress. Chu Liuchun's broken leg would recover after a period of rest, but if something happened to her sick and weak grandson, he would die. Chapter 695. How is Prince Zhou? The empress looked at the doctor of the Imperial Institute of Medicine with a gloomy face and asked. Prince Zhou is fine. He just needs to rest for a period of time. The doctor wiped the sweat on his head and answered carefully. In fact, Prince Zhou was not the most serious one when it came to broken bones. He didn't break his thigh bone, so it was not a big problem. However, as a prince, no matter how small it was a big problem. How can this be a big problem? The empress flew into a rage. She slammed the teacup in her hand on the table and shouted sternly. Yes, we will do our best to treat Prince Zhou. The doctor was so scared that he knelt down with a plop and said hurriedly, How long will it take for him to recover? The empress's question almost came out from her teeth. Well, he needs to rest for a few months. Lie in bed first and then slowly get up. But he can't move too violently. Be careful of getting hurt again. The doctor lowered his head and secretly wiped his cold sweat. As a doctor, he was really sad. It seemed that 1 or 2 princes always came to the Imperial Institute of Medicine. Not only Prince Zhou, who had never been in good health, but also the other princes. Speaking of this, the doctor also felt very wronged. It should take several months, and it sounds like there will be sequelae after that. The empress was furious. It was a critical moment now. If Chu Liuzhou really lay in bed and couldn't get up, it would not be a good thing. But he has broken his bones. He should take good care of it. Otherwise, if his bones grow crooked, it will be a big problem for his life. The doctor reminded her. The Empress's face darkened and she clenched the handkerchief in her hand tightly. She also knew that this kind of thing could not be rushed. But at this time, Chu Liuzhou broke his leg. Thinking of the person who was most likely to benefit from this matter, the Empress was so angry that her face turned blue. It was either Chu Luiyue or Chu Luqing. They dared to hurt her son at the gate of the Imperial Palace. She would never let them go. "Empress, how is he?" The door was pushed open, and the Emperor strode in. He glanced coldly at the bed in the room. Seeing Chu Liuzhou lying on the bed, he hurried over. "Your Majesty, please give Zhou justice." Seeing the Emperor come in, the Empress stood up and walked to Chu Liuzhou's bed, but she didn't look at Chu Liuzhou. She bent down and knelt down in front of the Emperor, holding a handkerchief and crying. Seeing that Chu Liuzhou was still in a coma on the bed with a splint on his leg tightly wrapped, the Emperor felt very uncomfortable. His son had always been the strongest among his sons, but now he was lying here in a coma, which really made him feel distressed. "Get up first." What did the Imperial Hospital say? The Emperor reached out to help the Empress and asked gently. The Empress saw the situation and stood up. She used a handkerchief to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes. Her eyes were red as she said, "Your Majesty, the Imperial Physician Academy said that Zhou broke his leg. How could it be so coincidental that he broke his leg at this time? Choosing a princess is a lifelong event. If Zhou can't be satisfied with her, I don't know what will happen to Prince Zhou's mansion in the future. Your Majesty, who wants to hurt Zhou? Please be my concubine and—" Speaking of this, the Empress couldn't go on and turned her head to wipe away her tears. The Emperor was silent for a moment and then comforted her in a low voice. "Your Majesty, don't worry. I will definitely find out whether it is an accident or man-made." The reason why he came late just now was that he first went to check the cause of the accident. Up to now, it still sounded like an accident, and it was an accident caused by Chu Liuzhou's carelessness. Chu Luqin was also involved in it, but Chu Liuchen's behavior was the same as before. Moreover, when the accident happened, he was very far away from Chu Liuzhou. It was Chu Liuzhou who turned around to talk to Chu Luqin after getting on the carriage. Chu Luqin didn't lead Chu Liuzhou to tell him before, so it seemed to be an accident. But as a member of the royal family, he didn't believe this kind of accident the most. The Emperor really didn't believe it in his heart, especially the horse of Prince Zhou's mansion. Why did it suddenly go crazy? It should be the coachman who asked about it in detail, but the coachman was unlucky and his neck was broken when he fell off the carriage. No one found it before. After dealing with Chu Liuzhou, it was too late to treat the coachman. The coachman died, and no one knew what happened to the horse. The horse suddenly went crazy, which made the Emperor have some speculations. The same points reminded the Emperor of what had happened before, which made him have a suspicion. But at the moment, he didn't get the final conclusion, so he naturally couldn't say anything in front of the Empress. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I thank you on behalf of Zhou." The Empress was a person who quit while she was ahead. At this time, she wiped away her tears. Although she still looked sad, she didn't object to the Emperor's result, which made the Emperor feel very comforted. Although the Empress didn't agree with him, at least she was not a person who pestered others endlessly. This was also the reason why the Empress had been in the Middle Palace for so many years and firmly sat on the position of Empress. "Where is Prince Qin? I heard that he was also there at that time. Is he okay?" After comforting the Empress, the Emperor looked around and asked. The Empress's long fingers almost pinched into her palm. The sharp sting made her face pale, but it also made her slowly relax. "The Empress Dowager is taking care of Prince Qin over there. I heard that he kept coughing because of the wind, but now he has stopped. I don't know how he is. I was so focused on Zhou, just now that I didn't notice Prince Chen's illness. I don't know how he is now. Prince Chen was also there when Zhou had an accident. He must be scared," the Empress said with a soft face. Although her eyes were still red, the concern in her voice could still be heard. The Emperor was silent for a moment, and his face became more and more gentle. It's really rare for the Empress to think of Prince Chen when Zhou was injured like this. You stay here to take care of Prince Zhou first. I will go to see Prince Chen. It happens that I also want to ask him about what happened at the palace gate just now. I heard that he sent Zhou to the Imperial Institute of Medicine. In this case, I really have to thank Prince Chen. This child is also filial. He came to the palace on such a cold day and talked with Zhou for a long time at the gate of the palace. He talked so much that he almost got sick. The Empress said. She had asked the people around Prince Zhou just now and learned that Prince Zhou had an accident because he talked with Chu Luchen. She had long wanted to cut Chu Luchen into pieces in her heart, but she still showed a gentle and generous expression, as if she really cared about Chu Luchen. However, behind these words of concern, she pointed out Chu Liuchen's doubts. Why did Chu Luchen appear at the palace gate at this time? If Chu Luchen didn't appear at the palace gate, would Zhou be fine? In this way, Chu Luchen was also doubtful. Although this invalid was of no great use, it did not mean that Chu Luchen was completely impossible to harm Zhou. Of course, the emperor understood her words. He looked at the empress with an unclear look and said slowly, "Well, I see. I will naturally find out the truth. Will you stay here with Zhou, or go back first?" "I will stay here with Zhou. I can't go back to sleep at this time." The empress shook her head, and tears fell down again. She hurriedly lowered her head and wiped them with a handkerchief. "Well, ask someone to clean up a room here. You take care of Zhou first. Go to sleep if you are fine, or you will be tired tomorrow. Zhou's health is important, so is your health," the emperor said softly. "Thank you, your majesty." The empress bowed sideways, and then watched the emperor leave with a trace of hatred and anger flashing in her eyes. "Your majesty, please sit for a while. His Highness will be fine." The emperor also said that he will definitely find out the truth. A palace maid comforted the empress softly. Seeing that the empress stood by the bed and didn't leave, she specially moved a chair over and helped the empress to sit down. Find out the truth? The people in the room were all her confidants. The empress sneered and said, "There are only a few people in the investigation. There is no need to investigate thoroughly. If the emperor really wants to, he can just arrest those 2 people and interrogate them directly. Your Majesty, please be careful with your words." The palace maid looked out of the window in panic. Although the empress's trusted subordinates were in the room, the emperor and empress dowager were outside. "I know." The empress gritted her teeth, suppressed the jealousy and hatred in her heart, and gritted her teeth. She had endured for so many years, what else couldn't she endure at this time? For the sake of her son, who was the future heir to the throne, she would endure no matter how hard it was. That woman, that invalid, she would endure it. The empress dowager stayed by Chu Liuchen's bed. At this time, Chu Luchen had fallen into a deep sleep, but even if he fell asleep, his face was still pale and bloodless. Hearing the sound at the door, the empress dowager looked back at the emperor who came in and sighed softly. Seeing the quiet atmosphere inside, the emperor lightened his steps, walked to the bed and looked at Chu Luchen who was lying on the bed. The imperial physician said that Chen had been exposed to the wind at the door for too long. "I'm afraid that he is sick again." The empress dowager sighed again and said helplessly, "Why did Chen enter the palace today?" The emperor frowned and asked with deep eyes. In fact, he had been ready to enter the palace for a long time. "I asked him to come here in the afternoon, but he was not in the mansion. The people in the mansion said that they would let him come when they saw him. Later, when they saw that it was snowing, they specially asked someone to tell him not to enter the palace. I didn't expect that the person who passed the decree later went the wrong way with him." The empress dowager blamed herself. It was she who asked Chu Luchen to enter the palace in the afternoon, but Chu Luchen happened to be not in the mansion at that time. The people in the mansion said that they would let Chu Luchen enter the palace when they saw him. Later, when she saw that it was getting darker and snowing, the empress dowager asked someone to tell him not to come in. She had asked him just now, but he went the wrong way. Chu Luchen didn't know that she didn't let him come. "Mother, don't worry. I will find out the truth." In case that the empress dowager was worried, the emperor comforted her in a low voice. It seemed that this matter had nothing to do with Chu Luchen. So were they really the two people he guessed? The emperor also had a headache, and then he became angry. He was still sitting on the throne, but they couldn't bear it anymore. With a turn of his mind, he thought of another suspicion. When Chu Luchen was in danger at the gate of the palace that day, it was because of the Changxing grass. This time, the horse was inexplicably frightened. Was it because of the Changxing grass again? And last time, when the fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion went down the mountain, her carriage had an accident and she almost lost her life. It was also because of the Changxing grass. If they were all true, Prince Zhou's mansion would be involved in it twice. Why did Prince Zhou's mansion repeatedly have something to do with the Changxing grass of the Su kingdom? Chapter 696. The news that Prince Zhou broke his leg at the gate of the Imperial Palace came out the next day. The emperor was furious in the court. He scolded the 6 ministries and the 9 ministers. As long as he could contact them, they all had a torrent of abuse. The imperial court was not as lively as it used to be. Everyone lowered their heads, listened to the emperor's angry scolding, and then threw down some memorials. Prince Zhou was the legitimate son of the emperor and the most popular candidate for the crown prince. Unexpectedly, he had an accident at the gate of the imperial palace. Thinking that Prince Qin also had an accident at the same time, many people had all kinds of guesses, but they dared not to say it. Everyone secretly guessed who did it. It seemed that this was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. If it was other princes who met Prince Zhou at the gate of the imperial palace this time, it would not be a big deal. After all, it was Prince Qin who fell down. It was not him, but Prince Qin, who was very sensitive. He was afraid of getting hurt in hot weather and cold weather. What's more, in order to save Prince Zhou at the gate of the imperial palace, he had been exposed to the wind for a long time. Last night the snow was heavy and the wind was strong. Everyone knew that the gate of the imperial palace was the windiest place. It was normal that he was still in a coma after being exposed to the wind. Sure enough, it was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Many officials secretly looked at Prince Yu, who was standing on the high place and listening to the scolding. Although Prince Yu was expressionless as usual, no one knew what he was thinking in his heart. It seemed that he was the most likely to benefit from it, but why did the emperor mention Prince Qing from time to time? Most of the officials in the imperial court were quick-witted. After thinking carefully, they suddenly realized something. Could it be that Prince Qing might also have a share? It was said that Prince Cheng, who had always been pure and had few desires, was even unwilling to marry a princess. Could it be that he also wanted the chair above? There were quite a few officials who had been reminded by the emperor to think this way. After all, the emperor's position had been obtained from the hands of the late emperor, and the late emperor was the emperor's elder brother. This meant that in this dynasty, it was customary for the elder brother to succeed the younger brother. However, unlike the late emperor, the emperor's sons had all grown up and seemed to be interested in this chair. There was only 1 chair, and the last one to sit on it would be the winner. Thinking of the bloody storm, it made people shudder. Of course, there was only 1 life. There were not many people who wanted to take the throne. Everyone thought that it was better to be safe, especially in the current unclear situation. Who knew who the emperor would like in the end? Everyone's life was a life, and it wasn't just their lives, but also the lives of their respective families. No one dared to act rashly. He should pretend to be deaf and listen to the emperor's scolding. Didn't he see that even Prince Yu didn't say a word? Therefore, the whole hall was quiet except for the emperor's angry scolding. After a long while, the emperor stopped scolding and then issued an appointment. It was to ask Commandery Prince Qing to attend the court and investigate the case that happened to Prince of Zhou at the gate of the palace. Since Chu Qing became Commandery Prince Qing, he had been doing nothing. No one took him seriously. As the son of the former emperor, only Prince Qin won the favor of the emperor and the empress dowager. Moreover, they had raised him since he was a child. Naturally, their affection for each other was not as good as that of others, even if Commandery Prince Qing was also the son of the former emperor. Moreover, Prince Qin had another advantage, which was that he would not threaten the inheritance of the throne. The emperor and the empress dowager doted on him so much, which naturally had a lot to do with his health. The officials all thought that it was normal for the emperor to do so. Anyone who sat in this position would appease Prince Qin. Not only would he appease him, but he would also dote on him. Of course, this was done for the world to see, wasn't it? But Chu Qing was different. He was healthy. Although his identity was not as noble as Chu Luqian, he was also the son of the former emperor. If he was in power, it would be different. Even if Chu Qing was recognized as Commandery Prince Qing, it could be considered that he had returned to his family. No one in the imperial court was stupid enough to ask him to come back to serve. They all thought that Commandery Prince Qing could only be an idle prince for the rest of his life, which was also a good thing. He didn't expect that the emperor would mention it himself. In such an atmosphere, no one would be stupid enough to refute the emperor. Therefore, Chu Qing entered the court and was mainly responsible for investigating what had happened to Prince Zhou at the gate of the imperial palace. After the emperor finished talking about Chu Qing, he turned around angrily and left the court. The officials all breathed a sigh of relief and left after saying goodbye to each other. Chu Qing also breathed a heavy sigh of relief and was overjoyed. He didn't expect that it would be so easy for him to enter the court, and the matter of Prince Zhou was actually his good thing. Originally, he had been worried about entering the court and wanted to work hard in secret. He didn't expect that the opportunity would come like this, and it was proposed by the emperor. This was much better and safer than secretly ordering people to speak for him. Commandery Prince Qing. A cold voice came. Chu Qing hurriedly restrained his emotions and turned around with a smile. He had just entered the court and couldn't offend anyone, let alone Chu Luiyue. Your Highness Prince Yu. The matter of my second brother involves a lot of people. My third brother is also in the Imperial Institute of Medicine now, and I will visit him later. If Commandery Prince Qing has any words for me to bring to my second brother and third brother, I will do my best to help. Chu Luiyue said lightly. I dare not trouble you, Prince Yu. I don't know the matter now, and I have to find out the truth before reporting it to the emperor. Commandery Prince Qing said indifferently. In this case, I'll leave first. I hope that Commandery Prince Qing can find out the truth as soon as possible and seek justice for my second brother and third brother. Chu Luiyue raised the corner of his mouth with a very faint and arrogant smile. Then he swaggered away and ignored Chu Qing. Chu Qing, who was left behind, blushed. He remembered that it was Xiao Yanru he had saved that day, but the people from Prince Yu's mansion said that it was Xiao Jie, the second miss of Xiao's mansion. Xiao Jie was just a daughter of a concubine, but she dared to lie and put the blame on him. However, he couldn't say that it was not Xiao Jie, or who he had saved at that time. With Chu Luiyue, Chu Liuzhou, and honored consort Shu, it was Xiao Jie. He had to swallow this silent grievance. Thinking of his resentment, he smashed the table in front of him in the mansion at that time, feeling both aggrieved and angry. It was because he was just an idle commandery prince of the imperial clan with no power or influence. Only with the title of commandery prince dared to bully him like this. Not only Chu Luiyue, Chu Liuzhou, and honored consort Shu, but also Xiao Yanru. In Chu Qing's heart, he had long hated these people together. As for Xiao Jie, who would want to marry such a daughter of a concubine? A little daughter of a concubine, who was not valued, also wanted to take the position of princess of Duke Xing's mansion. She didn't think that Duke Xing's mansion could do so. Chu Qing had been suppressing his anger these days. In order to suppress this anger, he didn't even go out and just stayed at home with an excuse of illness. He didn't expect that after staying at home, he would be blessed. After investigating Chu Liuzhou's case, he took a post in the Ministry of Justice. In the future, he would no longer be a powerless idle relative. Sure enough, some things couldn't be rushed. He had to take it slow. As for Xiao Jie's case, if Duke Xing's mansion offered good conditions, he could actually give her the position of a concubine, but it depended on whether Duke Xing would take any action. If he investigated Prince Zhou's case, he could get in touch with many people, some important ministers, and some important royal relatives, which was very good for his big plan. His position as a princess was of great importance and couldn't be given to others easily. He had taken a fancy to Xiao Yanru before, but now Xiao Yanru didn't like him, so he was unwilling to give his position to her. When he stepped onto the throne in the future, he would make this woman kneel in front of him and beg him to accept her. The news that Prince Zhou fell at the gate of the Imperial Palace also reached Xiao Wanru's ears. Of course, the news that Chu Luchen also went to the Imperial Institute of Medicine with him also came out. Xiao Wanru played with a hairpin in her hand and listened to Qing Er's report with a trace of gloominess in her watery eyes. She didn't believe that it was an accident, especially after she specially reminded Chu Luchen to be careful yesterday. It was impossible for Chu Luchen to have an accident. After inexplicably believing in Chu Luchen, Xiao Wanru didn't care about this matter anymore. This was a major event in the imperial court, and she, as an unmarried woman, couldn't intervene in it. What she could intervene in was some affairs in the backyard of the mansion, such as Wang Yishu's case. "Miss, I did meet Dr. Chiu just now. When he saw me, he stopped to greet me, and then he hesitated to say something before leaving." Chu Lu came in with a food basket, put down the food basket in her hand, and wiped the sweat on her head. She walked a little hurriedly just now, so she still felt sweaty even in the winter. She usually went to get lunch at this time, but Chu Lu had never seen Dr. Chiu in the past. Dr. Chiu always went in and out of the backyard by a remote road, so it was impossible for him to meet people from the Piaoyun courtyard. However, she met him today. "What did you say?" Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, rolled her watery eyes slightly and asked. "Of course, I did as you said. I just asked about Miss Wang's health according to the etiquette. Dr. Chiu said that Miss Wang's health is really not good, and it may be in a few days. If you're free." Speaking of this, he stopped and deliberately asked me to imagine it. Chu Lu said disdainfully. Dr. Chiu's trusted subordinates had been sure that Dr. Chiu had bad intentions towards their Mississippi. What Dr. Chiu did now was no different from what their miss had guessed. They admired and trusted their miss more and more. "Miss, shall we go now?" Qing'er asked. "It's not the right time yet. Let's wait a few more days." Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and said unhurriedly. She leaned back in the chair, passed the hairpin in her hand behind her, and said to Yu Jie, who was helping to comb her hair, "Use this hairpin." The hairpin made of purple bamboo was elegant and natural, which was very suitable for her current situation. It didn't have a bright appearance, but was simple and gorgeous. The color was not too plain. "Qing, keep an eye on the gate of the backyard tonight to see if Wang Xingxue comes here, if he comes here for Wang Yishu, and what they are talking about." "Yes, I know." Qing nodded and left. Yu Jie put the hairpin on for her. After looking at herself in the mirror, Xiao Wanru stood up and said, "Let's go and have a look now." Chapter 697. Xiao Wanru was going to meet the third madam of Duke Xing's mansion. Now the third madam of Duke Xing's mansion formally invited Xiao Wanru over for the first time, saying that she had something to discuss with her. The position of the first branch of Duke Xing's mansion was in the middle, and the first branch had the most courtyards. Everything in the mansion was originally left to the first branch to inherit, but later, the first branch only had the last one left. Since Xiao Yuanhao was here, no one cared about which ones belonged to the first branch. Since the second branch got the benefits, the third branch also got the benefits. The so-called first branch only had a child who knew nothing. Who would care about these things? After Xiao Wanru came back, the first branch had one more yard, but there were only a few yards in general. The third branch was originally very close to the side, but after getting a few yards from the first branch, it naturally moved closer to the middle. The third madam's courtyard was not far from Xiao Wanru's Piaoyun courtyard. When Xiao Wanru came over, she even saw the arrogant Xiao Jie in the third madam's room. This was the first time she had seen Xiao Jie since she came out of the Imperial Palace. Compared with Xiao Jie's timid look in the past, Xiao Jie in front of her looked like a noble daughter of lineal descent. "Fifth sister, third aunt has been waiting for you for so long, and you're finally here." Sure enough, nobles have a lot of matters to deal with. Seeing Xiao Wanru come in, Xiao Jie looked her up and down. She didn't find anything wrong with her dress, so she covered her mouth with a handkerchief and said with a smile, She had been used to being bullied by the other sisters in the mansion. Now that she had finally stood up, she thought that she would soon become Commandery Prince Qing's wife. Moreover, she heard that Commandery Prince Qing now had a job. In the future, he would no longer be an idle member of the Imperial clan. She had to find someone to show off. Xiao Wanru, who was out of favor, naturally became the target of her trampling. Xiao Jie was trying to humiliate herself in front of her. Xiao Wanru sneered in her heart, glanced at her coldly, but did not answer her. She just looked at the third madam, who was sitting there with a cold face, and said, "Third aunt, what's the matter? Can't I look for you if there's nothing?" Fifth sister, third aunt is now in charge of the internal affairs of Duke Xing's mansion. There are many things that may be related to you. Xiao Jie wiped the corners of her mouth with a handkerchief and said with a smile, but there was anger in her eyes. She thought, how dare he not take me seriously? He's too evil. The third madam picked up the teacup at hand and took a sip. Then she slowly put it down and let Xiao Jie scold Xiao Wanru. Third aunt is now in charge of the internal affairs of the mansion, so second sister comes to third aunt for no reason? I wonder if second sister used to visit third aunt so diligently in the past? Xiao Wanru said unhurriedly in a calm tone, as if she was not mocking Xiao Jie's flattery. Xiao Jie's face turned red. She angrily pressed the table and suddenly stood up. Xiao, what does second sister want to do? Do you want to vent your anger in front of third aunt? Could it be that second sister has forgotten her identity? Xiao Wanru raised her eyes and interrupted Xiao Jie rudely. She looked at Xiao Jie with her bright watery eyes, which made Xiao Jie feel guilty and inexplicably afraid to call Xiao Wanru by her name. Third aunt, did you ask me to come here to let second sister scold me? Xiao Wanru ignored Xiao Jie, who was frightened for a while, turned to the third madam and said with a smile. These words sounded like a joke, but the meaning behind them was not something the third madam could ignore. The third madam really wanted to show Xiao Wanru who was in charge of the backyard of the mansion. However, she didn't expect that Xiao Jie was so useless that she couldn't even speak after a few words with Xiao Wanru. Jie, you are the elder sister. How can you be so rude? Well, sit down. Third madam had to speak. Third aunt, look at fifth sister. Xiao Jie said unhappily. Not to mention your fifth sister, even third aunt wants to scold you. It is the basic condition of our mansion that sisters get along well with each other. If sisters can't get along well with each other, who can support them in the future? It is the most difficult for women. Although it is said that it is up to the elders whether they can get married well or not. After they get married, if they don't have the support of their parents' family, they can't have a good life. You can support each other after you get married in the future. The third madam said calmly. She looked a little better than before and calmer than when she saw Xiao Wanru last time. Although she was not happy, she was not gloomy either. She was just like an ordinary and fair madam. Yes, third aunt. Xiao Jie was very unconvinced, but she had to suppress her temper. She gritted her teeth and said, her elder sister had said that everything would be fine if she endured it. When she really became the princess of Commandery Prince Qing in the future, she would have plenty of time to trample on Xiao Wanru. She was really not afraid of Xiao Wanru. Wanru, you are also a member of our mansion now. Your surname is Xiao. Although you did not grow up in our mansion, you have to regard yourself as a member here. You can't be estranged from the sisters in our mansion. This is not Qin's mansion, and your sister is not the first Miss Qin. The third madam warned Xiao Wanru. Her words were very unpleasant. The resentment between Qin Yuru and Xiao Wanru had also spread all over the capital city 3 years ago. On the surface, the third madam seemed to want Xiao Wanru to understand that this was her home, but secretly she implied that Xiao Wanru had always been estranged from her sisters and competed with them for supremacy. She was not a good sister. Yu Jie was angry and wanted to raise her head to defend herself, but she was stopped by Xiao Wanru's eyes, so she could only lower her head. The third madam did not seem to be easy to get along with. She wanted to trample on her miss as soon as she came here. Third aunt, I naturally understand what you mean. This is Duke Xing's mansion, and I am also the lineal descendant of Duke Xing's mansion. Naturally, I am different from others. If you think that it is right for second sister to rebuke me as soon as she came in, I can go to old madam to defend myself. Xiao Wanru was as calm as water. The third madam's face darkened. She did not expect that Xiao Wanru would be so difficult to deal with. Since Xiao Wanru became the daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing, the third branch had almost no contact with her. This was the first time that they had confronted each other. The third madam did not want to suffer losses. She said, "Old madam, why bother such a small thing?" Unlike madam of Duke Xing, the third madam had never been very proud in front of old madam. It's best not to bother grandma. If I bother grandma, I may provoke grandma again, and it will be another trouble. Xiao Wanru took a deep breath, as if she was finally relieved. The third madam was very aggrieved. She glanced at Xiao Wanru and said slowly, "There are many things in your room that need to be changed, and they may not be changed in a short time. Old madam means that you can change some things appropriately. In fact, there are not many good things in our mansion. The fire 3 years ago burned all the good things in the courtyard. The fire 3 years ago burned the most gorgeous courtyard in the mansion and all the decorations. 3 years later, the courtyard that was rebuilt was still the most beautiful in the mansion, but it was still occupied by Xiao Wanru." Thinking of all kinds of unwillingness of her two daughters in private, the third madam also felt very unhappy. "When I lived in that courtyard 3 years ago, it was arranged by second aunt early, but I don't know why this courtyard was so gorgeous at that time." Xiao Wanru said with a blank face. Since the third madam mentioned this, it was a coincidence. "The courtyard 3 years ago was not arranged for you. It was originally for my brother." Xiao Jie curled her lips and said disdainfully. She just could not bear to see that Xiao Wanru, who was an orphan who was even worse than her, had the confidence to occupy the best courtyard in the mansion. But she could only occupy a corner. Why could an orphan without parents, who was not favored by the elders in the mansion, occupy such good resources? Jie, don't talk nonsense. The third madam frowned and said angrily. "Yes, third aunt." Seeing that the third madam was angry, Xiao Jie had to agree. After scolding Xiao Jie, the third madam turned to Xiao Wanru and said, "The courtyard 3 years ago was arranged by your second aunt for an important purpose, so the things inside were extremely gorgeous. At that time, you happened to return to the mansion. Your second aunt thought that your matter was the most important, so she gave the courtyard to you. However, she didn't expect that it would catch fire. Now if you want to decorate it again, it will not be as good as it was at that time. So she came here today to tell her that the things sent here to decorate would not be good?" Xiao Wanru sneered in her heart. Since the third madam took the initiative to come up and say that it was not good, it must be really bad. At most, it was not damaged, but the furniture inside must be the most ordinary kind. It might even be some ordinary furniture bought from the market now to decorate for her. At that time, even if someone said that these furniture were not decent, because she had promised in advance, she could only suffer in silence. The third madam was good at scheming. Once she got the upper hand, she would not be soft-hearted in suppressing others. She was still a weak girl in the boudoir. Even if she knew that she had suffered a loss, she could not say anything. Xiao Wanru rolled her watery eyes, looked at the decorations in the room, and said with a smile, "Third aunt said that the furniture is ordinary, but is it as good as the decoration here?" Compared with Madame of Duke Xing, the third madam had never been favored and even neglected by old madam. In addition, she had no children and only had 2 daughters, so she did not have enough power in the mansion. But even so, she still had the dignity as the third madam of Duke Xing's mansion. Every piece of furniture in the house was of exquisite quality. Even if it was not the kind of good wood furniture that had been passed down for generations, it was still carefully selected and valuable. It showed the dignity and nobility of a lady of the High Duke's public house. "You are a junior. How can you compare with third aunt? Do you want to decorate the same as third aunts?" Xiao Jie curled her lips and said in support of the third madam. The third madam picked up the teacup and took another sip. Then she turned the teacup in her hand. The teacup in her hand was a fine one given by old madam. It was extremely gorgeous among the furniture in this room, and she should not have it. The reason why she took it here was to suppress Xiao Wanru. She thought that she had nothing good in Qin's mansion. Third Madam's teacup is so beautiful. Can I have a look? Xiao Wanru rolled her eyes. Suddenly, she did not care about Xiao Zhe's sarcasm and smiled. Her beautiful smile immediately made the whole room lively. However, the third madam's face darkened. Chapter 698. It's not a valuable thing. It's just a set of imitations. The third madam said casually and even put down the teacup in her hand. Third aunt. Xiao Jie? Said in surprise. Well, there's nothing else. I'm tired now. You can go back first. The third madam reached out to touch her head and slightly closed her eyes. Third aunt, how's the layout of my house? Xiao Wanru asked softly. Of course it's as good as possible, but I've just taken charge of Duke Xing's mansion. There may be some things that I don't like. The third madam closed her eyes and said in a low voice. I believe you will do a good job. Second aunt has entered the ancestral hall and I don't know when she will come out. Third aunt is the only one in charge of the whole mansion. I heard that when my mother was alive, she got along well with you. I'll leave the layout of the house to you, third aunt. If there's really something not good, please tell me. I'll go to my grandmother's place to see if there's something more suitable. Xiao Wanru smiled sweetly and raised her long eyelashes, looking elegant and leisurely. The third madam's face changed. She suddenly opened her eyes and looked at Xiao Wanru coldly. Xiao Wanru also looked at her without avoiding her eyes. What are you talking about? Are you going to go to and great elder princess because the things in your yard are not suitable? Xiao Jie couldn't bear to listen to it anymore. She suddenly stood up and glared at Xiao Wanru. Second sister, don't be angry. If you have a grandmother like me, I'm afraid you will say the same. Xiao Wanru shook her hand gently and said with a smile. Although her words were soft and even charming, the provocation in her words made Xiao Jie's face turn red and she became furious. Everyone in the mansion knew that she was a daughter of a concubine, so how could she have a good grandmother? Xiao Wanru was obviously picking on her. Xiao Wanru? Xiao Jie was so angry that her voice almost cracked. Second sister, don't be angry. I'm afraid that something will happen to Commandery Prince Qing. I heard that Commandery Prince Qing has made an engagement. Xiao Wanru said meaningfully. The news was sent by Qing. Although it was still a rumor, it was spread to deal with Xiao Jie. What? Are you talking nonsense? Xiao Jie was anxious this time. Whether it's nonsense or not, second sister can go and find out for herself. What others find out is always false, right? It had been a long time since it happened. Did anyone from Commandery Prince Qing's mansion tell him? Could it be that you don't even intend to give me the position of a concubine? Xiao Wanru said meaningfully. Xiao Jie had taken the blame for Xiao Yanru falling into the water in the Imperial Palace. Of course, she wanted to blame it on Chu Qing and ask him to marry her as the legal princess. Of course, it was not a coincidence that Xiao Jie appeared here. But no matter who intervened, she had to remind Xiao Jie that she was not a good person, but she couldn't take care of herself. If Xiao Jie wanted to make trouble for her, she would make it more chaotic. A person like Xiao Jie couldn't do anything but spoil things. If Xiao Jie wanted to make trouble for herself, she might as well let Xiao Jie make trouble for others. I'm going to find big sister. Xiao Wanru couldn't sit still this time. After saying this, she went to find Xiao Yanru angrily in a fit of anger. If it had been in the past, she would not have dared to do it. But at this moment, in this situation, how could she not ask clearly? Fifth miss, you are really smart. Looking at Xiao Jie, who had left without even seeing her back, the third madam said with a cold snort. Xiao Wanru took 2 steps forward and bowed to the third madam again. Then she stood up straight with an increasingly gentle smile. She looked at the tea set with some curiosity and said, Third aunt, this tea set really looks like my mother's dowry. You know, for a woman of royal blood like my mother, some of the important dowry objects are painted with real objects. This is also for fear that her descendants will be deceived by others. This is just an imitation, not the real one. The third madam's face darkened, but her words were still gentle. It does look like it. Xiao Wanru smiled sweetly. Well, you can go back first. I know what you have done. The third madam drove her away with an unhappy look. A servant girl came in from the door with a bowl of medicine in her hand. Before she arrived, the smell of medicine had come in, followed by Xiao Tuan, the third miss of Duke Xing's mansion. Mother, you can take the medicine now. Xiao Caihuan walked in without looking sideways. After bowing to the third madam, she sat down beside her affectionately. Third sister. Xiao Wanru stepped forward and bowed. Fifth sister, are you here? What's the matter? Xiao Caihuan raised her eyes and asked indifferently. Third aunt asked me to deal with the matter of the courtyard. Since third aunt has made the decision for me, I would like to thank you. Xiao Wanru bowed to the third madam generously and then left. After she left, the third madam's face was very gloomy, and her eyes fell straight on her back as she walked away. Mother. Xiao Caihuan gently shook her sleeves. Change the furniture that we prepared before and find some good ones from the mansion to send over. If there are no suitable ones, buy them outside. We must not let her lose face. Also, return the furniture that you and your sister liked and put it in her courtyard. The third madam ordered. Mother, why? Didn't you say that we can choose whatever we want now? Xiao Caihuan asked in confusion. After taking charge of Duke Xing's mansion, the third madam immediately became generous to her two daughters and seemed to be in charge of the third branch. For so many years, the third branch had been suppressed by the second branch. In the inner courtyard, the third madam was not favored by old madam and was not the madam in charge of Duke Xing's mansion. All the good things were given to the two brothers of the first branch. In the eyes of old madam and the whole Duke Xing's mansion, the third madam was also extremely inconspicuous. What's more, the only child of the third branch was born from the concubine's belly. This made third foreign lose a bit of face. Her two daughters were not very favored by her. It was not easy for her to see the sun rise and finally be able to return home. Naturally, she wanted to move all the good things to the third branch. Therefore, she set her eyes on the furniture of the Piaoyun courtyard. Unexpectedly, Xiao Wanru refused to give in and said that she would let Ru and Great Elder Princess have a look after the furniture was cleaned up. What kind of person was Ru and Great Elder Princess? Old Madam was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood when she went against Old Madam, let alone Xiao Wanru, a powerless third madam. The third madam did not dare to really go against Xiao Wanru. Now because of her carelessness, she gave Xiao Wanru a handle on her. This tea set was bestowed by your grandmother, and it was a very rare occasion. Your grandmother was generous this time and took it out today. She originally wanted to shock this girl, but she didn't expect that this girl would recognize this tea set as Infanta Qinghua's dowry. The third madam said with a gloomy face. Just now, Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on this tea set, which immediately made her have a bad feeling. She suddenly remembered that after old madam gave it to her, she had sent someone to check it and found that it was Infanta Qinghua's dowry. As a sister-in-law, it was not appropriate to use her eldest sister-in-law's dowry. If Ru and Great Elder Princess knew it, she was afraid that she would turn the world upside down. So let's just let it go? Xiao Caihuan said unwillingly. Like the third madam, she had always been invisible in Duke Xing's mansion under Xiao Yanru's halo. It was not easy for her to become the master of Duke Xing's mansion. Anyway, she should get great benefits like Xiao Yanru in the past. At least don't touch the first branch. The third madam thought for a while and said. She picked up the bowl of medicine at hand and drank it up. After putting it down, she wiped the corners of her mouth with a handkerchief and looked at the door thoughtfully. Just a few words with Xiao Wanru made her feel that the girl in front of her was not simple. Xiao Wanru used both soft and hard tactics to drive away Xiao Jie, who wanted to argue with her. Seeing the tea set in front of her, Xiao Wanru didn't say anything, but she made it clear in her words. This kind of scheming was not something an ordinary person could compare to. She remembered that everyone in the mansion said that the fifth Miss Xiao was the most pitiful master in the whole mansion because old madam didn't like her. Since she returned to the family, no one really regarded her as one of their own. Such a master could be trampled on by the servants of other families. However, Xiao Wenru was fine, and it was Madam of Duke Xing who had an accident. How could the third madam not know about her second sister-in-law? She was scheming and had many tricks up her sleeves. But something happened to her? The meaning of this was not simple. Everyone in the mansion and even people outside the mansion said that Xiao Wenru was pitiful, but it was others who really suffered losses. It was extremely horrible to think about it. After thinking it through, the third madam made up her mind and said slowly, "Wash this tea set and give it to Xiao Wenru. In the future, you and your sister can visit the first branch when you are free." "Mother, what? Didn't you tell us not to get too close to them before?" Xiao Zaihuan became more and more confused. Her mother didn't say so before. She told them that they didn't need to get too close to the people in the mansion. Anyway, they didn't take them seriously, so they could just take advantage of her illness and the people in the mansion. "Our third branch has always been ignored in the mansion. Compared with your second aunt, I am much worse. When Infanta Qinghua of the first branch was alive, she was really good to me. Now the sister and brother of the first branch are lonely. It's not wrong for us to make friends with them. You don't expect to be a stepping stone for Xiao Yenru, do you?" The third madam said casually. "I won't." Speaking of this, Xiao Zaihuan gnashed her teeth and said, "Others only thought that the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion was gentle and dignified, but she knew that Xiao Yenru was horrifyingly vicious. All the good things belonged to her, and others were stepping stones for her to step on. If she hadn't been clever at that time, she would have almost been ruined by Xiao Yenru. Every time she thought of Xiao Zaihuan, she wanted to tear off Xiao Yenru's disguise. "Mother, don't worry. I will make friends with fifth sister." Xiao Zaihuan was not stupid. She immediately understood the third madam's reason and nodded. "Take this tea set and wash it, send it to her, and take my sister to visit the mansion." The third madam, who was not in good health, touched her head and ordered, "Yes, mother, I'll go in a minute." "Wait a minute, take this ring too." The third madam suddenly rolled up her sleeves, and there was an exquisite dark ruby ring on her slender finger. Chapter 699. Big Sister, why didn't anyone from Commandery Prince Qing's mansion come? Xiao Jie rushed into Xiao Yenru's room and said anxiously to Xiao Yenru, who was about to take the medicine. Xiao Yenru put down the bowl in her hand heavily, looked at Xiao Jie coldly and asked, "What's the matter?" Xiao Jie's heart trembled under her cold stare. She immediately came to her senses, bowed sideways to Xiao Yenru, and said, "Big sister, I came back from third aunt's place." "What did third aunt say?" Xiao Yenru lowered her head, looked at the bowl of thick medicine soup in front of her, and said coldly, "I told third aunt about the arrangement of fifth sister's courtyard. Although third aunt didn't say it clearly, she should give fifth sister some ordinary furniture." Xiao Jie had something on her mind, so she said vaguely, "In that case, you can go back. I have to take medicine." Xiao Yenru asked her to leave with a cold face. "Big sister?" Xiao Jie had always been afraid of Xiao Yenru. "If you have something to say, just say it. If not, you can go back." Xiao Yenru said impatiently. She had been nervous these days, and she hadn't been relieved until now. Although Dr. Chiu said that his method worked, it hurt her vitality after all. Thinking that Xiao Jie was involved in it, she couldn't calm down. The look on her face was a little more gloomy than usual, and she was in a different state from before. "Big sister? I just want to ask when Commandery Prince Qing's mansion will propose marriage?" Xiao Jie summoned up her courage and said, "How do I know?" Xiao Yenru said coldly. Her own marriage had not been settled, so how could she pay attention to Xiao Jie? She just said it that day. Did she really think that Commandery Prince Qing would make her his wife? Didn't she know that Xiao Jie's status was nothing compared with hers? "Big sister, you said that Commandery Prince Qing would marry me." Xiao Jie was frightened by Xiao Yenru's words and burst into tears. Xiao Yenru picked up a teacup at hand impatiently, threw it at Xiao Jie, and scolded her angrily. Shut up. The cup was empty. When it hit Xiao Jie's arm, it hurt a lot even though there was no water. Then the cup fell to the ground and broke into pieces. One piece even cut Xiao Jie's foot, tearing her skirt. Xiao Jie stopped crying and looked at Xiao Yanru in horror. Why are you crying? If you have the ability, go to the Imperial Palace and cry. Tell them that it was me, not you, who fell into the water that day. Let the Empress Dowager and the Empress find out that you lied. Let's see what they will do to you. At worst, they will say that you have deceived the Emperor. At worst, you will lose your reputation. Xiao Yanru sneered and said sarcastically. Her words pierced Xiao Jie's heart. She had dared to ask in this way because she felt that she had something on Xiao Yanru and could ask Xiao Yanru to beg Commandery Prince Qing to marry her. After all, she had done Xiao Yanru such a big favor and helped her out of trouble, but she had never thought that it would be a big crime if she went back on her word. This information belonged to Xiao Yanru as well as herself. At this moment, Xiao Jie suddenly came to her senses. She clenched the handkerchief tightly with her fingers and trembled slightly. In fact, the information belonged to her, didn't it? Even if she went back on her word and pushed the blame to Xiao Yanru, how could Prince Zhou, Prince Yu and honored consort Shu let it go? In fact, not only she but also they were guilty of deceiving the emperor. If things really came to this point, she was afraid that she would not even be able to survive. Thinking of this, she felt terrible. She looked at Xiao Yanru with slightly red eyes, her face was pale, and her lips trembled a few times, but she couldn't say a word. Go back and think about what you should do next. I'm afraid that the matter of Commandery Prince Qing's mansion will not be solved in a short time. But since it happened in the Imperial Palace, the Empress Dowager and the Empress will definitely give us an explanation. Go back and wait. If there is any news, I will ask someone to tell you immediately. Seeing that she was so scared, Xiao Yanru's face softened a little. After all, she still needed Xiao Jie's help now and didn't want to really have a bad relationship with her. Now there were few people in the mansion who could help her. If she didn't hold Xiao Jie back, there would be no one else she could hold on to. Yes, thank you, big sister. Xiao Jie opened her mouth again and finally heard her own voice this time. You can leave. Xiao Yanru waved her hand. Yes, big sister. Xiao Jie didn't dare to argue with Xiao Yanru this time. She turned around and walked out in a daze. When she walked to the door, she turned her head and glanced at Xiao Yanru, and then walked out with drifting eyes. Xiao Yanru, who was not a kind person, had such a handle on her. How would she treat her? As long as she thought of such a possibility, Xiao Jie trembled with fear and felt cold all over. She even had a feeling that she would eventually die in Xiao Yanru's hands. Why did she agree to replace Xiao Yanru at that time? Now it seemed that if something really happened, Xiao Yanru would definitely push her out. She might even say that she wanted to be Commandery Prince Qing's wife and begged her to let her replace her. Xiao Jie was not hopelessly stupid. Thinking of Xiao Yanru's vicious actions with Madame of Duke Xing in private in the past, she really felt that it was very possible. Thinking of this, she felt uncomfortable. Standing at the gate of the courtyard and thinking for a while, she gritted her teeth and walked to a path. Now she could only turn to her biological mother, concubine Lu. Xiao Jie hurriedly went to find her biological mother, concubine Lu, whom she had always despised. On the other side, Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Kailing went to see Xiao Wanru affectionately with a tea set in their hands. Hearing that the two sisters had come, Xiao Wanru personally went to the corridor to welcome them and happily took them in. It was the first time for the sisters of the third branch to come here. In the past, Madame of Duke Xing thought that her eldest son had decorated the wedding room. If the decoration was not finished, she would refuse the two sisters of the third branch outside the courtyard. Now when she came in and had a look, she increasingly felt that Madame of Duke Xing was partial. However, it could be said that there was a scenery within 3 steps and a pavilion within 5 steps, which could not be compared with other courtyards. When they got inside and saw that the furniture inside was indeed inconspicuous, the two sisters looked at each other. The shabby furniture in the room had been removed, and the furniture brought here was simple and temporary. The formal furniture had not been moved in yet. The third madam had just taken over this matter. Today, it was Xiao Wanru who went over to take care of it. Now it seemed that it would be done soon. Xiao Wanru asked someone to serve tea with a smile, and then said with a smile, "Third sister, fourth sister, please sit down. It's simple for me for the time being. Third aunt should be done soon, right? My mother said that it would be soon. She will redecorate your room in a few days. If you don't like it, you can tell me or my mother." Third Miss Xiao Zaihuan said with a smile. Xiao Kailing glanced at Xiao Wanru and said nothing. In fact, she was not very willing to come here. Since what happened 3 years ago, the third branch was not close to the other masters of Duke Xing's mansion. If there was nothing important, they almost did not contact each other. The reason was that the third madam was in poor health. As long as the third madam was mentioned, old madam of Duke Xing and madam of Duke Xing would think of the reason why the third madam was in poor health. It was the collision that had been planned for a long time. For this reason, old madam and madam of Duke Xing no longer disdained the third branch as they used to and always behaved much more kindly. It was okay if the third madam and the 2 daughters of the third branch did not come, as long as they did not cross old madam's bottom line. As for now, Xiao Zaihuan and Xiao Kailing did not feel very agreeable to the other sisters in the mansion. Xiao Zaihuan was a little better. After all, she was a little older and could adjust her emotions well. At this moment, she was smiling, as if there was no grudge between her and Xiao Wanru. As for the fourth Miss, Xiao Kailing, she was a little nervous. She looked at Xiao Wanru with a bit of scrutiny and unkindness. She still remembered that her mother's car accident was related to the Qin's mansion. Xiao Wanru was still Qin Wanru at that time. In this respect, it was also related to Xiao Wanru. Mother asked me to bring this tea set. It was given to mother by grandma a long time ago, and today is the first day to use it. Since fifth sister likes it and thinks it is similar to Infantachingwas, she asked me to bring it here for you. Xiao Zaihuan pushed the tea set in front of Xiao Wanru and said with a smile. But she did not directly say that it was Infantachingwas. This is not good. Since it was given by grandma to third aunt, how can I take it? Xiao Wanru seemed to know nothing and gently pushed the tea set and gift box in front of Xiao Zaihuan. What's wrong with it? It was not originally my mother's. Grandma gave me a lot of gifts before, but my mother has never been favored, so she got this set. After you returned to the clan, my mother has been in poor health and has no time to give you a gift. It's rare that you like it. Isn't it just right? Xiao Zaihuan said. Her words were all meant for Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru rolled her watery eyes and said with a deep look, "The third madam did a good job. Not only did she dispel her doubts, but she also pointed out the way for her. However, this was what she had planned, so she was not surprised. What she said to the third madam before was not only meaningful, but also used both carrot and stick. If the third madam was a smart person, she would definitely know what to do next. At present, it seemed that the third madam was not stupid. 3 years ago, she built a ladder for her, and 3 years later, she also pointed out a way for her. Of course, this guidance was given that she could make the third madam fear her. If it were not for her words, what the third madam would do now was not to point out the way for her, but to suppress her with the second branch. After all, for the whole Duke Xing's mansion, there was no so-called kinship with her. However, this was also good. At least she could see through people's hearts clearly. Thank you, third aunt. Third sister, fourth sister, thank you for me when you go back. Xiao Wanru no longer refused. She smiled slightly and said meaningfully, if I gain something in the future, I will not forget you. Chapter 700. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign /say net there was no pop-up window for free reading. Everyone wanted to make friends, so this conversation was very gentle. It could be regarded as the first time that Xiao Wanru had talked with her sisters since she entered Duke Xing's mansion. Xiao Zaihuan was not as arrogant as she was when they first met, and she was very polite in her words. Xiao Kailing didn't say much and only responded with a lukewarm tone occasionally. From time to time, she looked Xiao Wanru up and down with a probing look. In general, They met happily and left happily. Even the two sisters of the third branch invited Xiao Wanru to go out with them in a few days. After talking for a while, the two sisters went back. Xiao Wanru deliberately walked them out of the courtyard and watched them leave before turning around. It snowed heavily yesterday and drifted for most of the night. When she got up today, the snow had been shoveled in the courtyard, but the road was still very wet. Yujia was afraid that Xiao Wanru would fall, so she specially supported her and carefully helped her to the main room. After standing in the corridor, she stamped her feet and suddenly saw a dark red spot on the steps at the bottom of the corridor, which looked particularly enchanting and dazzling in the snow. "Miss, what's this?" Yujia also saw the dark red spot. She took a few steps down and picked it up to have a look. It turned out to be a ring with a dark red gem surrounded by a circle of fine pearls. There was a red pistil in the white jade, which looked like an elegant but extremely gorgeous fragrant flower. Such an exquisite fragrant flower ring was rare. Xiao Wanru took it and looked at it a few times. Then she rolled her eyes and fixed her eyes on a small mark on the corner. She had seen a lot of this mark in her last life. "Miss, it should be dropped by the third miss and the fourth miss." Yujia looked at it and said, "Such an exquisite ring was definitely not something that a servant could take out. Even if her master rewarded someone, it was impossible for her to reward such a ring. Send it to the third sister and the fourth sister." Xiao Wanru rolled her watery eyes, handed the ring to Yujia and ordered, "Yes, miss, I'll go right away." Yujia nodded, picked up the ring and hurried out. Xiao Wanru looked up at the outside of the courtyard. Xiao Zaihuan and the others didn't walk for a long time, and it was such a snowy weather. Even though the snow on the road had been shoveled, there was still a lot of snow in other places, so they must walk slowly. "Young miss, this servant didn't see any rings on the two young misses' hands just now." Qin Yu lifted the curtain and walked out. Hearing the noise outside, she came out and heard Xiao Wanru and Yujia's conversation. Such an obvious ring. If it was on the hands of the two young ladies just now, how could she not see it? Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and stepped into the room through the lifted curtain. Immediately, a gust of warm air rushed in and swept away the coldness outside. Xiao Wanru took it, walked to the couch, sat down, and looked out of the window thoughtfully. Yujia walked fast, so she should have caught up with them at this time. Sure enough, not long after, the sound of footsteps could be heard. She came to the porch and stamped her feet to shake off some of the snow on her feet. Then, Yujia lifted the curtain and walked in. "Miss, the two ladies said that it's not theirs. They've never seen this ring before. They also said that they never wear rings." Yujia walked in with the ring in her palm. "Put it down." Xiao Wanru said indifferently, "When you went there, did they walk very slowly near our courtyard?" "Yes, the two young misses were not far from the gate of the courtyard. They walked very carefully and talked and laughed. After walking for a short distance, they heard my call and stopped immediately." Yujia nodded and answered. Xiao Wanru put the ring back in her palm and turned it over. She narrowed her watery eyes and looked at the small mark on the corner of the ring. "It's from the palace," she said slowly. Many things in the palace had universal marks, and this ring was one of them. How could something from the palace fall here? Yujia asked in surprise. "They brought it here," Xiao Wanru said and turned to look at Qin Yu. "Is the set of picture books sent by my grandma here?" "Yes, Mississippi, wait a minute. I'll get them right away." Qin Yu answered and entered the inner room. After a while, she came out with a set of picture books. This picture book was one of the details of Infanta Qinghua's dowry. There were some specially made items that were drawn into a picture book with the real thing. Xiao Wanru opened it and looked down page by page. As expected, she saw a ring in the lower right corner of one page. This page was a set of jewelry. The set of jewelry included bracelets, pendants, hairpins, and this ring. "Is this the dowry of Infanta?" Chu Lu, who was sharp-eyed, also found this pattern when Xiao Wanru saw it. She looked at the ring on the table and then at the pattern on it, and immediately found that they were exactly the same. "It's one of my mother's dowry," Xiao Wanru said with a smile, closed the picture book in her hand and handed it to Qin Yu. When she saw this ring, she had guessed it, so she was not surprised at this time. Duke Xing's mansion was very favored by the emperor, so it was not surprising that there were some things from the palace in the mansion. However, these things from the palace fell in front of her accidentally with the help of Xiao Zaihuan and her sister, so they seemed to be different. The only things that could be contacted and might be useful were these relics of her mother. Sure enough, Xiao Zaihuan and her sister came here today not only to make friends with her, but also to give her a reason. Isn't this tea set also from the palace? Why did they send this tea set and secretly throw this ring into the snow under the corridor? Chu Lu asked in confusion. At this time, the maids all understood that this ring had something to do with the third miss and the fourth miss, but the two of them repeatedly denied it. They really couldn't figure out what they were up to and what they meant. Xiao Wanru reached out to open the tea set on the table and looked at the tea set inside. As expected, it was the set she saw just now. She had read the picture books sent by her maternal grandma several times, especially some of the more distinctive objects. She had roughly remembered them, but because there were so many of them, she still couldn't remember some of them. She guessed that this small ring belonged to her mother, but she really couldn't tell it without seeing the picture books. At this time, she already understood. This tea set should be given by old madam. The third madam sent it to me because she wants to be friends with me. But if I make a fuss about this matter, the third madam will definitely be in trouble, so she has this ring. This ring should not be given directly by old madam to the third madam. Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on this tea set. She picked one up and looked at it. It could be seen that it was well preserved, with almost no traces of being used. It should be rarely used. Not given directly by old madam? Then where did it come from? Qing Yu was shocked by the twists and turns in it. It may be from the third uncle, or it may be obtained by chance, or it may even be picked up. Xiao Wanru narrowed her eyes slightly, with a sense of laziness and casualness. The third madam was really thoughtful. Picked up? Can this kind of thing be picked up? Chu Lu was surprised. At first glance, it was obvious that this kind of thing was of great value and must belong to the owner. No matter which servant picked it up, he would not dare to keep it secretly and would definitely return it. How could it fall into the hands of others? Did the third madam prepare it for a long time? Yu Jie saw something else from Xiao Wanru's look and suddenly widened her eyes. Xiao Wanru didn't answer and just nodded. It seemed that the third madam had indeed prepared it for her long time. Today, the third madam invited her to meet the third madam in order to test her attitude. If she was really useless and timid, she would not get this ring. Not only would she not get it, but she would also be suppressed by the third madam. Now, the third madam showed her goodwill and offered her conditions. It coincided with her thoughts. Since they sent it here secretly and showed that the ring had nothing to do with them, it meant that she could continue to investigate it with confidence. Put this ring away and deal with it after the matter about Wang Yishu is settled. Yes, miss. Can my leg get better soon? Chu Liuzhou looked at the imperial physicians kneeling on the ground with a cold face and said sternly, Your Highness, calm down. This kind of thing can't be rushed. The imperial physician on duty hurriedly persuaded him. In fact, the prince's injury was not too serious. It can't be rushed, it can't be rushed. The more Chu Liuzhou thought about it, the angrier he became. How could he not be angry when he suffered this unexpected disaster? He picked up the cup at hand and smashed it hard on the ground. How could he calm down? The consort selection was coming, and he had a lot of things to do. This was a major event related to his life. How could such a thing happen at this moment? He had always been in good health, and he had never thought that he would fall at the gate of the Imperial Palace at this moment like Chu Luchen, the invalid. Last time, when Chu Luchen fell and fainted at the gate of the Imperial Palace, he had laughed at him in the mansion afterward. Now it was his turn and he was so seriously injured, so he only felt ashamed and angry. Your Highness, the Empress told you not to worry, and she will definitely visit a famous doctor to treat you. The personal eunuch standing by the bed answered carefully. If it is useful to visit a famous doctor, Chu Luchen will not always be like this. Chu Liuzhou felt that Hu Yan's meaning was very obvious, so he said angrily, Your Highness, in fact, There is indeed a famous doctor, but the eunuch said and looked at the imperial physicians in the room, who were also listening with their ears stretched. There was no first place in literature, and there was no second place in martial arts. It was the same with medical skills. These imperial physicians had extraordinary medical skills, and they knew Chu Liuzhou's injury very well. They all thought that Chu Liuzhou had to recuperate well because time was running out. However, according to the eunuch's words, there was actually a famous doctor who thought that time could be shortened. After looking at each other, they all listened with their ears stretched out angrily. Who on earth said such nonsense and deceived Prince Zhou? All of you can leave. Chu Liuzhou also saw the behavior of the imperial physicians, waved his hand and scolded angrily, "It's useless." The imperial physicians could only stand up gloomily, look at each other, and leave. "Tell me, where is the famous doctor?" Seeing the imperial physicians leave, Chu Liuzhou hurriedly asked. "I heard that there is a miracle-working doctor in Prince Chen's mansion." The eunuch answered, but before he finished, he was interrupted by Chu Liuzhou impatiently. "What miracle-working doctor? If it is really useful, Chu Luchen will not be like this now." There was no outsider in the room, so Chu Liuzhou was not afraid that others would hear it. Chapter 701. Your Highness, if you think that the miracle-working doctor of Prince Chen's mansion is useless, I actually have another doctor here, but... The eunuch hesitated. "Say it." Chu Liuzhou's face darkened. "But the medicine may be a little heavy, and I think it's not very safe." The eunuch stammered, lowered his body and said respectfully, "Can it shorten the treatment time of the leg injury?" Chu Liuzhou asked after a moment of silence. "It's possible, but it's better to use a heavier dose. His Highness is the son of a noble family, so it's better not to try it. The imperial physician's method is more reliable." The eunuch advised. "When will you bring him to me?" Chu Liuzhou frowned. It was not good to use heavy medicine, but it would be a good thing if it could shorten the time of his recovery. For a moment, he could not decide whether he should use a safe method or shorten the time. Shortening the treatment time might cause harm to the body. He still had this bit of knowledge. "Then bring him here in a few days, Your Highness?" The eunuch asked. "Ask him to come here quickly," Chu Liuzhou said in a deep voice. Whether it was necessary or not, he should ask him first. "Yes, I know." The eunuch lowered his head and answered. "Have you found out that I fell off the carriage?" After saying this, Chu Liuzhou asked about the thing he had asked his trusted subordinate to investigate before. "I haven't found out. The emperor is also investigating this matter." "Is it related to Prince Chen?" The eunuch reminded him. It happened suddenly. At that time, no one expected that Chu Liuzhou would fall off the shaft and have an accident. It should not be related to that invalid. Chu Liuzhou thought for a while and shook his head. In any case, it had little to do with Chu Luchen. What was more, it was not Chu Luchen who wanted to talk to him at that time. However, people who grew up in the imperial palace all had their own thoughts. Even if they were sure, they would not say it at this time. "Your Highness, should we investigate it? The coachman died, and the horse suddenly ran away. But we can ask the servants who have a relationship with the coachman," the eunuch suggested. This proposal made Chu Liuzhou frown more tightly. He asked with a complicated look, "Do you think it has something to do with the galloping horse incident at the gate of the palace?" There were too many similarities between the two incidents. They all happened at the gate of the imperial palace and were related to the sudden accident of the horse. Most importantly, they were all related to his mansion. Chu Liuzhou's heart skipped a beat. He was a little hesitant at first, but he immediately became firm. Investigate. Investigate the entire residence. Not just this coachman, but also the coachman from last time. You must find out who is the one causing trouble in the dark. Last time, they framed him for killing the patient and intended to make him lose favor with his father and grandmother. This time, they intended to kill him. Thinking of the imperial physician's implicit words that the coachman fell to his death because of the wrong fall, Chu Liuzhou felt irritated. If he didn't fall properly, he would have lost his life in an instant. "You want to investigate the coachman as well?" But the last time I said there were no more clues. The eunuch said awkwardly. The matter of the carriage last time had already been investigated in the residence, but indeed, they did not find anything. You must look for him. Not just him. Even his family and his old friends and neighbors must be investigated. Chu Liuzhou gritted his teeth and said with hatred, as long as there is something suspicious, investigate it, no matter where he was sent from. There were many concubines in his mansion and many beauties from the Imperial palace. There were many forces from all sides. The reason why he couldn't investigate it before was that it was inconvenient for him to investigate some places. But it was different this time. This time, they almost stabbed him with a knife. How could he bear it? Yes, Your Highness. I'll go and investigate it now. Looking at Chu Liuzhou's face, the eunuch knew that he was really determined to find out the matter this time, so he nodded hurriedly. Seeing the eunuch leave, Chu Liuzhou's face was cold and dark. He leaned back again and was very angry. This time, it was definitely not an accident. Every time his carriage went out, he had checked it very clearly. It was absolutely impossible for such an accident to happen. What was more, the coachman fell down and died. How could it be possible? He didn't believe it. Miss, Child Wang went to a doctor's place yesterday, and he went to another one today. After that, I asked someone to sneak in and inquire about him. He said that he took some dregs of medicine and asked someone to identify them. Moreover, he paid a high price to have them authenticated. He even left some dregs of medicine for the visiting doctors. Both doctors did the same thing. Qing reported what she had found out in the past 2 days to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru fell silent, with her watery eyes flickering slightly. As expected, the brother and sister of the Wang family became suspicious. It seemed that the brother and sister of the Wang family took Wang Yishu's dregs of medicine to have them diagnose. It seemed that the brother and sister of the Wang family were very cautious. They not only found several doctors, but also asked these doctors to authenticate them and even left some dregs of medicine. If Duke Xing's mansion wanted to take action against Wang Yishu would not give up without putting up a fight. In the past, Wang Yishu only took some medicines with conflicting properties, which were not easy to be discovered. Now that Duke Xing's mansion was going to take action against Wang Yishu would definitely take more medicines than usual, which would be easier to be discovered. There might even be some medicines that could make people weak or kill them. Only by increasing the dosage of medicines that could make people weak and conflicting with each other, coupled with acupuncture, could they kill people quietly. Miss, I met Dr. Chiu on the way here today. Dr. Chiu went to the kitchen to get some food and said that Miss Wang's condition had worsened. He was going to go back, but now he couldn't go back, so he went to the kitchen to get some pastries to eat. Chu Lu told Xiao Wanru about her meeting Dr. Chiu again today. Xiao Wanru curved her lips. It was another accident, and it was an extremely natural accident. Wang Yishu's condition was not very good, so as the doctor in charge, he naturally couldn't go back. He should stay by her side and observe. He said that Miss Wang wanted to see you and that she had fulfilled her wish. Chu Lu said discontentedly, with so many people watching in the kitchen, I couldn't say no to you, so I just vaguely agreed. Dr. Chiu also told me to hurry up, otherwise Miss Wang's condition might be really bad. Everyone in Duke Xing's mansion knew the cause of Wang Yishu's illness, so they also knew that there was a grudge between the 5th Miss and the 5th Mississippi. However, the biggest grudge was that she was going to die now, so they should go to see her. Hearing Dr. Chiu's words, the servants all turned to Chu Lu and observed her performance. At this time, Chu Lu represented Xiao Wanru's attitude. Even if Chu Lu was full of reluctance, she had to agree. Thinking that she was forced by Dr. Chiu to say that she would go there immediately, Chu Lu was so angry that smoke came out of her nose. At first glance, she could tell that this doctor surnamed Chiu was not a good person. Not many people heard it when they met on the way here, and she didn't say that her master would go there. Now in the kitchen in front of all the servants, if she didn't say that her master would go there, she would seem cold and cold-blooded. Of course, Chu Lu had to promise that her master would go there as soon as possible. Miss, you didn't see Dr. Chiu. When he heard that you would go there in the afternoon, he was so happy and even showed a sad look on his face. It's really annoying. Chu Lu became more and more angry. Dr. Chiu thought that he had concealed it well, but she had been paying attention to him, so how could she not see the complacency and smile flashing in his eyes? Well, don't be angry. This is what my master predicted. In their eyes, you are forced to do this, but in my eyes, you are just pushing the boat with the current. It's nothing. Yu Jie came in with a cup of tea with a smile, put it in front of Xiao Wanru, and comforted Chu Lu, who was about to jump up and down in anger. Miss, you are smart to think of it, but they really think that they can harm you in this way. It's really aggrieving. Chu Lu said angrily. Then what do you want? Are you going to say that you have been waiting for them to force you? Yu Jie teased. Her words made Chu Lu smile. After thinking for a while, she raised her head proudly and said, "Don't they know who my master is? They really thought that they had schemed against you and forced you to agree to this matter. They were afraid that you would not agree, so they specially came to stop me, but they didn't know that my master had already predicted it." Her complacent look made Xiao Wanru laugh involuntarily, as if she was the successful one. "Miss, who are you going to bring this time?" Chu Lu, who had calmed down at this time, asked with a smile. Xiao Wanru glanced at the three maids present, Qing, Yu Jie, and Chu Lu. After thinking about it carefully, she said, "I will bring Yu Jie. In the past, I usually brought Yu Jie with me, and this time is no exception. After all, Qing was only a second-class maid. If she brought a second-class maid instead of several first-class maids around her, it would be easy to arouse suspicion. Yu Jie was the most inconspicuous one, and she was more useful than ordinary maids. Wang Xingxue had prepared for it, but she didn't know how well he had prepared. But no matter what, it was good to be prepared. Chu Lu, did you do as I said? Miss, I did exactly as you said. Don't worry. Chu Lu nodded. Xiao Wanru fell silent again, looked at the time outside the window, and said, Qing, go to the Chuehua gate to stop Dr. Chiu. Why should I stop him? Qing Lier asked in confusion, will he leave at this time? I think so. He can't stay here and become a suspect. Xiao Wanru's eyes darkened a little. Dr. Chiu would definitely think of a way to get out of it since he could put the blame on her and get out of it. Or even if he couldn't get out of it, he might make her the least suspicious. Stop him and prevent him from going back? Then I'll go now. Qing turned around and was about to leave. Wait a minute. It's impossible for him to leave the mansion now. Go outside the First Mrs. Courtyard and see if he has gone to the First Mrs. Courtyard. If he goes to Wang Yishu's courtyard later, you can follow him. Xiao Wanru waved her hand to indicate that she was not in a hurry. At this time, they could have time to make arrangements. Madame of Duke Xing was locked up, so it was not convenient for her to command Dr. Chiu, so Xiao Yanru was naturally the most suitable candidate. She stood up, walked to the window, picked up the writing brush with her left hand, wrote a few words, dried it, twisted it into a small paper ball, handed it to Qing, and said, send it to Wang Xingxue. Qing couldn't leave by herself, so she could ask the guard sent by Chu Luqian in secret to send it out. Miss, you don't have to go to such trouble. I'll go. I saw Child Wang's servant just now. He is still in the mansion at this time. I heard that Child Wang has been busy in the mansion these days. Chu Lu took a step forward and asked for permission. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.